Hi guys, welcome to Midnight Anime Library. Starting with Roger's Ghost, I command an Invincible Soul Army Part 4 Chapter 61, the Marines launch a full-scale attack. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the island, dozens of Marine warships formed the Buster Call fleet, like a group of steel beasts, silently crouching on the shimmering sea, contrasting eerily with the devastating commotion on the island. Bogard stood on the deck of the flagship, his expression grim, his eyes behind his sunglasses locked onto the distant island, which was barely recognizable. The gusts of wind caused by the clash of conquerors hockey blew his clothes vigorously, even from this distance. Mr. Bogard. A young Marine Rear Admiral approached, his face filled with unmistakable worry. Admiral Akiji ordered us to stand by, but the battle on the island. His words trailed off, but his meaning was clear. I know, Bogard's voice was cold and steady. But this level of battle was truly beyond the reach of their mid to low-level forces. The black and red lightning bolts soaring into the sky, the golden slashes that stirred the winds and clouds, were enough to make any soldier with unsteady resolve collapse on the spot. However, as soon as he finished speaking, three white figures appeared ghost-like on the deck, silent and unmoving. They wore identical white suits and masks that hid all expressions, exuding an eerie, spine-chilling coldness that clashed with their surroundings. The strongest shield of the celestial dragons, CP0. Jernica, the leader, scanned all the Marine officers with his gaze from behind his mask, his voice devoid of emotion, like two cold stones grinding together. What are you doing here? Why aren't you supporting the battle on the island? The Vice Admiral was taken aback and instinctively stood at attention. Reporting. Admiral Akiji ordered us to stand by. The conqueror's hockey of the strong fighters on the island is too powerful. Our elite Marines cannot participate. So to avoid unnecessary losses, we were ordered to stand by. Oh? Jernica let out a meaningless hum, his voice filled with unconcealed contempt. Useless sentimentality. He stepped forward, the invisible pressure making all the officers present feel a sense of suffocation. Now, CP0 will take command of your forces. Immediately. All hands, deploy. Land on the island and surround and kill the demon emperor of 10,000 souls Lin Yi and his accomplices. No mistakes. But Bogard wanted to argue. In his view, this was simply sending the soldiers to their deaths. Execute the order. Jernica's voice suddenly rose, a sharp killing intent instantly locking onto the Vice Admiral. Yes. All the Marines, including Bogard, could only stand at attention and salute, acknowledging the order. The command spread quickly like a ripple. Whoop woo. The steam whistle blew, and the massive Buster Call fleet began to slowly approach the hellish island. Soon, the warships reached the shore. Under the roars of their superiors, the elite Marines gritted their teeth, held their guns, and charged off the ships. But when they truly set foot on this island and experienced the devastating battle scene up close. Boom! In the distance, Garp's fist pistol blast turned a small hill into a flat plain. Ha 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 ha! Slash wave. In the air, Golden Lion Shiki's slash, like a golden judgment, cut deep gashes into the earth. Every Marine who set foot on the island turned pale, their legs shaking uncontrollably. This is a battle humans can participate in? Bogard paid no mind to the fear of the soldiers behind him. His gaze had already pierced through the chaotic battlefield, locking onto one spot. There, Admiral Akiji stood, emanating coldness, confronting Lin Yi, Golden Lion Shiki, and a man holding a red umbrella. At their feet were 5 lifelike ice sculptures, the 5 Marine Rear Admirals who had been defeated earlier. Support Admiral Akiji. Bogard roared, his foot stomping the ground as he launched himself like a cannonball towards the core of the battlefield. The 3 CP0 members, upon seeing Lin Yi, followed closely without a word. Oh dear, this is... Akiji looked at the 3 menacing figures before him, about to say something, but his peripheral vision caught sight of people who shouldn't be there. He turned sharply, and when he saw Bogard, the 3 CP0 in white like morning clothes, and especially the massive Marine force behind them, timidly approaching. A surge of uncontrollable anger welled up from within him. Bogard! Akiji's voice, for the first time, lost its characteristic laziness, becoming angry and cold. What's going on? I ordered you to stand by at sea. Our ordinary Marines can't participate in this level of battle. His question struck Bogard like a heavy blow. Bogard stopped, saying nothing, only helplessly glancing at the 3CP0 beside him. Akiji understood instantly. Again, these world government lackeys. He stared at the three expressionless masks, his gaze filled with a killing intent that was almost tangible. It was too late to say anything now. The only thing to do was to end this battle, end it as quickly as possible. I hope the losses won't be too great, Akiji sighed to himself. He shouted to the approaching soldiers, medics. Quick! Treat the 5 severely injured vice admirals. However, the 3CP0 members completely ignored Akiji's murderous gaze. Jernica walked straight up to Lin Yi, his eyes behind the mask examining him like an object. You are the demon emperor of 10,000 souls, Lin Yi? Lin Yi looked up and down at the 3 figures dressed like they were in mourning, grinning widely, revealing a mouth full of white teeth. That's me, what of it? Good. Jernica's voice remained flat. Take him down. As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 CP0 members behind him disappeared. Finger pistol. 2 powerful hockey-infused attacks, one from the left and one from the right, aimed straight for Lin Yi's vitals. You're dead. A low shout, and a red figure like a ghost instantly blocked Lin Yi. It was Redfield. He opened his red umbrella with a whoosh, the umbrella's surface becoming harder than steel under the cover of armament hockey. Clang! Clang! 2 sharp sounds, and the CP0's finger pistols were actually blocked by that seemingly fragile umbrella. Oh! Interesting. Jernica's voice finally held a hint of interest. You're dealing with me. Redfield's voice remained ice-cold. Ha 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 ha. Ice boy. Our battle isn't over yet. On the other side, Golden Lion Shiki laughed wildly, swinging his dual blades and engaging the grim-faced Akiji once more. Meanwhile, Bogard also moved as soon as CP0 made their move. His target was also Lin Yi. This deputy of Garp was also a powerful swordsman, drawing the sword at his waist. It was an ordinary-looking sword, its blade even showing signs of age. But the moment he gripped the hilt, his entire demeanor changed. It was a sharpness honed through countless trials, returning to a state of simple purity. Demon Emperor of 10,000 souls, your opponent is me. Bogard's voice was steady and powerful. Lin Yi looked at this man with his hat pulled low, the word elite written all over his face, then at Redfield, who was already battling 3 CP0 members, and couldn't help but whistle. Damn, this is getting interesting. He twisted his wrist, pointing his sword at Bogard. Alright, Garp's deputy, is it? I'd like to see what you've learned following the hero's ass. Clang! Sword and blade clashed fiercely. On Redfield's side, facing 3 CP0 members with at least near-admiral level strength, even he felt some pressure. The battle, in an instant, became even more intense and chaotic. Chapter 62, Reaping the Vice Admirals. Bang! A loud crash echoed as the solid wooden conference table was smashed, leaving a deep crater. Those bastards! Sengoku trembled with rage, his temples throbbing with bulging veins. His usually stern face was now contorted with barely contained fury. Those CP0 idiots, do they have much for brains? Sending our Marines to their deaths? Vice Admiral Tsuru stood nearby, her expression grim as she watched the horrifying scene projected on the wall by the transponder snail. It was like a battle of the gods. She knew all too well. At that level of combat, even elite Marines would be near cannon fodder. A stray burst of hockey or a misdirected slash could instantaneously take their lives. What are the Gorosei thinking? Sengoku roared, grabbing the golden transponder snail and dialing furiously. BRRR. Click. A voice on the other end of the transponder snail was calm to the point of coldness. Sengoku, what is it? Satan's saint. Sengoku growled, suppressing his anger. Why issue the order for all personnel to land? Do you have any idea what this will cost the Marine? The voice on the other end paused, then responded with a hint of displeasure. Sengoku, are you questioning our decision? The voice was devoid of emotion. Obey the order. Beep. 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 The transponder snail was hung up abruptly. Sengoku clutched the receiver, his hand trembling with veins bulging, teeth grinding audibly. Damn it! Damn them all! Those high and mighty fools don't care about our losses in the Marine. How about? Vice Admiral Tsuru sighed and suggested, we send Zephyr to assist? No! Sengoku immediately rejected the idea. Zephyr is currently stationed at the G5 branch in the New World. If we move him, Kaido and Big Mom will seize the opportunity. The conference room fell into a deadly silence. At that moment, a lazy, drawling voice broke the tension. Oh boy, this is troublesome. Borsellino, aka Kizaru, was lounging on a sofa in the corner, his legs crossed. He smirked. How about? I take over for Teacher Zephyr? Just guarding the branch should be no problem. Sengoku turned sharply, staring at Kizaru intently. A few seconds later, his tense expression softened slightly. He nodded firmly. Then I'm counting on you, Borsellino. Kizaru waved his hand casually, his figure disappearing in a flash of golden light. Sengoku wasted no time and immediately grabbed another transponder snail, dialing Zephyr's number. On the island, the battle raged on. Clang! 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 Lin Yi and Bogard's blades clashed dozens of times in mere seconds, each strike sending sparks flying in waves of fierce energy. Garp's vice-captain fought with the steadiness of a mountain, his swordsmanship impenetrable and flawless. Lin Yi's brow furrowed slightly. His gaze flicked to another part of the battlefield. Redfield was there. The three CP0 agents were far stronger than he had anticipated, their coordination seamless. Even the formidable, the solitary Reds struggled to find an opening against their combined assault. This couldn't drag on any longer. Lin Yi's gaze swept over the chaotic battlefield, locking onto a distant sight 5 severely injured Marine headquarters vice admirals being urgently treated by medical personnel. Redfield's battle couldn't be rushed to a quick conclusion, so he would break through from another angle. Hungry Ghost Realm, devour soul! Lin Yi shouted, and dark spectral figures wrapped around his blade, emitting a chilling howl as they surged toward Bogard. Bogard's expression changed, feeling a cold chill. He swiftly raised his blade to block. Now! Seizing the moment Bogard was entangled, Lin Yi vanished from his spot. In the next instant, he appeared like a ghost beside the 5 critically injured vice admirals. Who's there? The elite Marines tending to them were startled, but before they could react, swift blade flashes swept past them. Thud! Thud! Blood sprayed. Several medical personnel collapsed, throats slit, without even a chance to scream. Lin Yi didn't spare them a glance, his blade moving without pause. It sliced precisely across the necks of Mamanda and Doberman, who lay on the ground. Finishing blow. Soul capture. All in one smooth motion. No! Bogard saw this and his eyes turned blood red. He let out a heart-wrenching roar. Consumed by rage, he abandoned all defense, his blade becoming a whirlwind of frenzied strikes aimed at Lin Yi. Lin Yi smirked, continuously retreating and dodging. Though his steps seemed chaotic, he always managed to evade the attacks by a hair's breadth. And his retreat led him straight toward the Elite Five's battlefield. Bogard, blinded by fury, didn't notice this. His mind was fixated on one thought: kill Lin Yi. Avenge his comrades. Just as the two were about to clash into the Elite Five's battle circle, Lin Yi's gaze met with those of 1 and 2, exchanging a silent understanding. 1 and 2 instantly comprehended. Simultaneously, they unleashed a burst of powerful haki, forcing their respective opponents, 2 ordinary Marine vice admirals, back several meters. Without hesitation, they abandoned their foes, intercepting Bogard's enraged assault like an iron wall. Clang! Clang! Blades clashed. Bogart's frenzied attacks were halted by their combined strength. This brief respite was all Lin Yi needed. He vanished again. When he reappeared, he stood before the two Marine vice-admirals who had just been forced back and hadn't yet regained their footing. Hell Realm, Shatter Soul. Two dark, ominous blade flashes streaked past. Two agonized screams were abruptly silenced. Soul Capture. Almost simultaneously, 3, 4, and 5 created similar openings for Lin Yi. 3 swift movements, 3 screams. In the blink of an eye, the battle had turned. The 10,000 Souls banner now held the spirits of 7 Marine Headquarters vice-admirals. The entire process was swift and breathtaking. Lin Yi. Bogart watched in horror as his comrades were slaughtered like mere blades of grass. He broke down completely. His scream of endless rage and despair pierced the chaotic battlefield, even drowning out the clash between Garp and Roger. This cry instantly caught the attention of 2 distant groups. The CP0 agents surrounding Redfield paused. On the other side, Akiji, who was locked in a fierce battle with Golden Lion Shiki, turned his head sharply. Seeing the 7 lifeless bodies of the vice-admirals lying in pools of blood, his usually lazy face froze over with a layer of thick ice. A soul-freezing killing intent exploded from him. "You are dead!" Akiji roared, ready to charge at Lin Yi with all his might. But this time, Golden Lion Shiki was prepared. "Ha ha ha! Ice boy! Your opponent is me!" Shiki laughed wildly, his dual blades blazing with brilliant golden light, blocking Akiji's full-force attack. "Get out of my way!" Akiji's fury was fully ignited. Ice Age. Boom! Extreme cold spread like a tidal wave, radiating out from Akiji in all directions. The temperature of the entire island plummeted to below freezing in an instant. Ice Ball. Countless basketball-sized ice balls rained down on Golden Lion like cannon fire. This battlefield instantly became Akiji's frozen, killing domain. Chapter 63, The Golden Lion Unleashes His Power. Jaya ha ha ha. Now that's more like it, you freezing brat. Golden Lion Shiki's maniacal laughter echoed like thunder over the island, now transformed into an arctic hell. The 2 famed swords beneath his feet, Sakura Ju and Deadwood, carved 2 brilliant golden arcs through the swirling blizzard of ice shards, shattering the countless ice balls hurled by Admiral Akiji. The clash of ice and steel erupted in deafening roars. However, even the Golden Lion felt a long unfamiliar pressure facing a thoroughly enraged, murderous admiral. All traces of his signature laziness had vanished from Akiji's eyes, replaced only by a coldness capable of freezing souls. The corpses of 7 vice-admirals lay not far away, their crimson bloodstains glaring against the pure white ice. Shiki. Akiji's voice was hoarse, each word seeming forced through gritted teeth. "Today, neither you nor your accomplices will leave." Oh! Quite the bold claim. The smile on Shiki's face widened, but a flicker of genuine seriousness flashed in his hawk-like eyes. He took a sharp, deep breath, and an aura far more terrifying and savage than before erupted from his body. "Since you're so eager to play, I'll give you a game you'll never forget. Flutter Flutter Fruit, Awakening Lion's Might, Zero Gravity Domain." The moment the words fell, the entire world seemed to hit a mute button. Immediately after, an indescribable, reality-defying sense of the bizarre enveloped the battlefield. Bzzz, the ground trembled faintly. Everything, the trees frozen into ice sculptures by Akiji, the severed boulders, even the ice-sealed ground itself, began to slowly, uncontrollably, float upwards. What's happening? My body, it's floating. Help! This can't be real. The surrounding marine elites instantly plunged into massive panic. They felt as if an invisible hand had plucked them from the ground, their limbs flailing helplessly in the air, grasping at nothing. Some willful soldiers immediately raised their guns, aiming at the Golden Lion hovering in mid-air. "Open fire! Stop him!" Asterisk bang! 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 Boom! Asterisk gunshots and cannon fire rang out. Yet, the bullets and shells capable of tearing through steel, the moment they left the barrels, bizarrely lost all momentum, drifting limply in the air before slowly floating upwards. The attacks were utterly ineffective. Retreat! Lin Yi, Patrick Redfield, and the Elite Five almost instantly disengaged, retreating from the battlefield now completely dominated by zero gravity. The three white-suited CP0 agents and Bogard also paled drastically, swiftly putting distance between themselves and the storms formed by Akiji and Shiki. A thick layer of armament haki covered the soles of Akiji's feet, forcibly gluing him to the cracking, floating ice sheet. He watched grimly as the golden lion, suspended in midair like a deity manipulating the entire world, his eyes filled with wariness. Was this the true power of a legendary great pirate? Bogard! Akiji suddenly turned his head, roaring towards the chaotic marine positions in the distance. Evacuate the wounded vice-admirals. Now! Don't let any more of them die here. Bogard's eyes were bloodshot. He glanced at the corpses of his 7 comrades on the ground, then at the soldiers floating helplessly in the sky like lambs to the slaughter. A wave of immense grief and powerlessness surged in his heart. He gritted his teeth hard, tears mixed with blood trickling from the corners of his eyes. Yes, Admiral Akiji. No retreat is permitted. Our mission is. Jernica, the lead CP0 agent, panicked and started to protest. Get lost. Akiji silenced all his words with a single word and a look that promised death. Jernika's lips twitched beneath his mask, but in the end, he didn't dare utter another syllable. Bogard hesitated no longer. He turned and charged towards the chaotic soldiers, beginning to organize the evacuation. Meanwhile, high in the air, the Golden Lion's mocking gaze fell once more upon Akiji. First, I'll deal with you, you troublesome bastard. He gave Akiji no chance to catch his breath, his hands clenching empty air. In an instant, countless massive ice blocks, towering frozen trees, along with vast swaths of uprooted, ice-sealed ground, surged towards Akiji from all directions like an army obeying an emperor's command. Sorrow. Akiji's figure turned into a blur, darting at high speed between the countless deadly floating objects. Those he couldn't dodge, he refroze with extreme cold before shattering them with a punch. Ice fist. Ice block, partisan. However, the floating objects Shiki controlled were simply too many. Endless. Jaya ha ha ha. Futile. Shiki laughed maniacally, slamming his hands together. Lion's might, earth roll. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the entire frozen ground was torn up by an irresistible, colossal force. Mixed with thousands of tons of ice and rubble, it surged like a tidal wave from all directions, completely sealing off every avenue of escape for Akiji. Akiji's pupils contracted. Seeing no way to dodge, he could only cross his arms before his chest, pushing his armament haki to its absolute limit. The next second, he felt his body become like a magnet with infinite attraction. Asterisk whoosh. 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 Whoosh, asterisk all the floating objects instantly changed direction, attaching and wrapping themselves around him at a terrifying speed. Crushing. Enveloping. Crushing again. In the blink of an eye, a colossal sphere over 100 meters in diameter, composed of ice, rock, and trees, took shape in midair. And Akiji was pressed dead center within this planet. Die, you freezing brat! The Golden Lion sneered, mustering all his strength to hurl the enormous sphere like a shot put, hurling it violently towards the sea. Asterisk boom. Asterisk a deafening, earth-shattering roar. The sea surface, as if struck by a meteor, erupted with a terrifying spray hundreds of meters high. Admiral Akiji. The floating marines screamed in horror and despair. Shiki couldn't even be bothered to glance back. He slowly turned his head, his cold gaze falling upon the marines still struggling in the air. He merely, gently, raised a hand. Whoosh, thousands of marine elites instantly shot uncontrollably towards the sky like launched rockets, quickly disappearing from everyone's sight, becoming tiny, barely discernible black dots. The entire world fell silent for a moment. Not long after, innumerable black dots reappeared, rapidly growing larger in their vision. Help! I don't want to die. Mama! Terrified screams and desperate wails rained down from the sky. It began to rain. A rain made of living people. Figures plummeted from high altitude like dumplings into a pot, crashing heavily onto the ground, onto their horrified comrades who hadn't yet evacuated and were looking up in terror. "Quick, get out of the way," a commander shouted, his voice hoarse. However, it was too late. Thud. Thud. Crunch, dull thudding sounds rose and fell. Flesh was pulped, bones shattered. One body crushed another, piling atop each other. The horrific scene on the field was beyond any words. Ugh, ugh. Many young Marines, watching their comrades crushed to death by other comrades, witnessing this hellish panorama, had their psychological defenses instantly shatter. They knelt on the ground, weeping uncontrollably. Lin Yi watched the scene, his Adam's apple involuntarily bobbing. Even he, accustomed to grand spectacles, felt genuine discomfort in his heart at this moment. These old generation pirates are truly, ruthlessly vicious. The three CP0 agents remained as indifferent as ever, as if not thousands of Marines, but thousands of ants had died. Shiki was even more dismissive. Marines and pirates were mortal enemies. He had seen scenes like this many times before. Right at that moment. Boom. A violent explosion suddenly erupted from beneath the distant sea. Immediately, the sea surface where the massive crater had been formed instantly froze solid at a visible rate. The ice spread wildly in all directions, transforming the vast expanse of sea into an endless ice plain in the blink of an eye. A figure wreathed in freezing air shot up from beneath the ice. It was Akiji. Though he looked somewhat disheveled now, his uniform torn, a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, the killing intent in his eyes was 100 times more intense than before. Jaya ha ha ha. Still alive? Let's go again. Shiki, far from alarmed, was delighted. Laughing loudly, he flew towards the ice surface, once again engaging Akiji in fierce combat. Haki clashed. Sword energy crisscrossed. Ice and floating objects were wielded with ease. The two legendary powerhouses turned this ice plane into their final arena. And Lin Yi, in the instant everyone's attention was captured by that world-shaking duel, silently activated the 10,000 Souls banner. A faint black banner shadow, ghost-like, skimmed the ground, swiftly sweeping across the Shura field littered with corpses, gathering the souls of thousands of Marine elites into its fold. Having done this, he lifted his head, casting his gaze towards the distant figure of Patrick Redfield, who was fighting 1 against 3. A playful smile curled at the corner of Lin Yi's mouth. Redfield. Time for another upgrade. Chapter 64, Ride Redfield, Strengthen. Ride. Lin Yi gave a low shout. The sound wasn't loud, but it was like a precise steel needle piercing through the chaotic battlefield and stabbing into Ride Redfield's ears. Ride Redfield, who was currently locked in combat with 3 CP0 agents, paused his elegant and composed movements abruptly. He lightly spun the red umbrella in his hand, parrying 2 lightning-fast Shurgan attacks. His scarlet cloak whipped out a blur, and his entire body retreated backward like a phantom, instantly reappearing beside Lin Yi. What is he trying to do? The 3 CP0 members wearing pale white masks paused instinctively for half a second, somewhat confused. However, they were, after all, the strongest shield of the celestial dragons. Their combat instincts were already ingrained in their bones. After a brief moment of confusion, they immediately relocked their targets, preparing to strike again. But it was already too late. Go! 5 tall figures, like 5 iron towers descending from the sky, violently blocked their path. It was the Elite 5. Seeking death. The CP0 agent's tone was filled with disdain. Their figures flickered as they attempted to bypass these 5 reckless individuals. But when the Elite 5 stood there, their auras connected, faintly forming an unbreakable battle formation that completely sealed off all avenues of advance for the 3 CP0 agents. Battle was imminent. Although the Elite 5 immediately found themselves at a disadvantage, constantly in peril and suppressed, they only had one mission: to stall for time. And that was enough. Lin Yi didn't even glance at the battle unfolding over there. All of his focus was concentrated on Ride Redfield beside him. He grinned, revealing a set of bright white teeth. "Ride, let me give you an upgrade." Before his voice faded, he violently shook the 10,000 souls banner in his hand. Voom! A visible grey torrent, formed by countless souls, surged out from the banner like a bursting river. Within it were the powerful souls of 7 Marine Headquarters Vice Admirals. It was the essence of thousands of elite Marine souls. This immense, suffocating energy was controlled precisely by Lin Yi without the slightest dissipation, and it was poured entirely into Ride Redfield's body. Ride Redfield closed his eyes. The previously calm surface of his face finally showed a ripple. His entire body began to tremble slightly, as if countless points of light were moving and colliding beneath his skin. His aura began to climb at a terrifying speed. Stronger. Even stronger. Still getting stronger. That invisible pressure made the surrounding air feel viscous, and the gravel on the ground trembled uncontrollably with a rustling sound. Suddenly, in that instant, as if breaking through some invisible barrier, a terrifying aura, far more potent than before, erupted violently from Ride Redfield's body, like an ancient beast awakening. Boom! A violent airwave swept out in all directions, centered on him. Ride Redfield slowly opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to hold a boundless starry sky, deep and cold. His injuries were healing, and his physique, eroded by time, seemed to be injected with new vitality. Although he hadn't leaped to the heavens to return to the solitary peak of the For Emperor's Prime, this power. It was enough. What a refreshing feeling. He murmured softly, and immediately, an invisible aura of supreme dominance swept across the entire field. Conqueror's Haki. Aga! Thud! Thud! In the distance, the elite Marines who were barely surviving the rain of people from the Golden Lion, crying out in agony, didn't even have time to react before their eyes rolled back, and they simultaneously fainted to the ground, foaming at the mouth. The entire world instantly became much quieter. What? The CP0 agents fighting the Elite 5 were also jolted by this sudden Conqueror's Haki, causing them to stumble, their movements freezing for a split second. This is the moment. The Elite 5 seized this rare opportunity. 5 weapons wrapped in armament Haki struck fiercely from 5 tricky angles. Sorrow. After all, they were CP0. In the moment of crisis, the 3 forcefully stabilized their minds, stomping hard on the ground, their figures instantly blurring, narrowly dodging the fatal combined strike. When they reappeared, they were dozens of meters away. Beneath their 3 masks, unconcealed shock was evident. What happened? Ride Redfield's strength, how did it suddenly increase so much? Ride Redfield merely smiled without answering. The next second, his figure vanished. Fast. Extremely fast. Sure gone. Rankyaku. The 2 CP0 agents' alarm bells rang wildly, and without hesitation, they launched their strongest attacks towards their predicted positions. However, in the face of Ride Redfield's observation Haki, which had become supremely powerful and capable of penetrating minds, all their thoughts and actions seemed like a script written on paper, clear, yet laughable. Ride Redfield's figure moved like a leisurely stroller walking through a storm, calmly and elegantly weaving through the gaps between the dense attacks, without even his cloak being grazed. The red umbrella in his hand had already appeared before them, its tip was condensed with armament Haki as black as ink. Not good. The leading CP0 agent's pupils contracted violently as he saw the red phantom closing in on him. He had no time to dodge. He could only cross his arms over his chest, pushing his armament Haki to the limit, while roaring. Tekai! He actually intended to take the hit head-on. Ride Redfield looked at his unyielding stance, and a mocking curve appeared at the corner of his mouth. He showed no mercy. The red umbrella in his hand, carrying unparalleled sharpness, fiercely stabbed forward. Slash! The Tekai and armament Haki, capable of resisting cannonballs, were as fragile as thin paper before that red umbrella. The tip of the umbrella pierced unobstructed through his crossed arms and penetrated his chest. The The CP0 agent looked down in disbelief at the gaping hole spurting blood on his chest. Blood mixed with fragments of internal organs also trickled from his tightly clenched mouth. The next second, an immense force struck him, sending him flying like a kicked ball. He smashed heavily onto the ground, his life uncertain. That tech guy had confidence. Lin Yi watched from afar, not forgetting to give a thumbs up to the figure flying away. The other two CP0 agents took the opportunity to attack from the sides, attempting a sneak attack. But Ride Redfield merely shifted his body slightly, easily dodging them like an illusion. What remained was a one-sided slaughter. Under Ride Redfield's storm-like onslaught, the remaining two CP0 agents found it exceptionally difficult even to parry. Before long, they followed the fate of the first, collapsing to the ground covered in blood. "Wrap it up!" Seeing this, Lin Yi eagerly ran over, ready to collect the spoils. The leader, Jernica, lay on the ground, spitting blood heavily. Seeing Lin Yi's grinning face approach, he quickly used the last of his strength to issue threats. We are the strongest guards of the celestial dragons. If you dare touch us, you are declaring war on the world government." Oh, okay, I get it. Lin Yi nodded perfunctorily, but his hands didn't stop. With a move of the 10,000 Souls banner, the faint black banner shadow enveloped the three of them. He gestured to Ride Redfield. It was time for the finishing blow. "Hey, wait!" Jernica panicked, trembling as he pulled a transponder snail from his robes. This is the transponder snail of the Gorasi Isers. We really are." His words were cut short. Ride Redfield didn't pay any attention. The red umbrella in his hand moved swiftly, and the umbrella fell. Thwack! 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 3 heads flew into the air. Lin Yi was quick-handed, instantly capturing the 3 souls, and at the same time, bundling up the over 1,000 elite marines who had been knocked unconscious by the Conqueror's haki in the distance. Ride Redfield bent down, picked up the blood-stained transponder snail, and handed it to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took it, glanced at it casually, then stuffed it into his pocket. He then shook the new members within the 10,000 Souls banner and winked at Ride Redfield. "Ride, how about absorbing more?" Ride Redfield shook his head, a hint of complexity flashing in his deep eyes. "I can feel that even if I absorb this amount in strength of souls again, it won't be enough for me to recover to my peak." He paused, his voice carrying a hint of emotion. "My strength, eroded by time, isn't so easily recovered. Time is the most terrifying force in this world." Lin Yi paused. So that was it. He finally understood why such a massive amount of energy, 7 vice admirals plus thousands of elite marines, wasn't enough to restore Ride Redfield completely in one go. Time, that thing, was the ultimate debuff. In comparison, although Roger wasn't young, compared to an old monster like Ride Redfield who had lived for who knows how many years, he was still quite young, and recovery was naturally easier for him. "All right then." Lin Yi shrugged. The battle here was finally resolved. He raised his head and cast his gaze into the distance. Shiki and Ikiji were still fighting fiercely, their ice and sword energy churning the heavens and earth. As for Bullet and Roger, their fight was making the entire island groan in agony. Lin Yi shifted his gaze away from those battlefields where gods fought and focused on the more than 10,000 elite marines standing nervously and helplessly on the distant shore. Some evil switch inside him seemed to have been flipped with a snap. The corner of Lin Yi's mouth slowly curled into a malicious arc. He beckoned to the Elite 5 beside him, pointing at the dense crowd. "You 5, go reap the harvest. These are all excellent soul nourishment." "Yes, boss." The Elite 5 responded in unison, excitement flashing in their eyes. Without any hesitation, they charged towards the marine formation, which was like an all-you-can-eat buffet to them. Chapter 65, The Madness of Akiji. Lin Yi's gaze shifted from the 5 ghostly figures rushing towards the shore, turning to look at the still elegant and composed Patrick Redfield beside him. "My strength has also reached a bottleneck," he grinned, pointing to himself. "Since these souls can't help you advance anymore, I'll give it a try and see if I can break through that barrier." He paused, his tone becoming more serious. "Ride, protect me." "All right." Patrick Redfield responded crisply, lightly tapping his red umbrella on the ground. He stood motionless as a statue, vigilant of his surroundings. Lin Yi said no more and sat cross-legged. The ancient 10,000 souls banner silently floated beside him. Visible wisps of black gas, as if possessing a life of their own, slowly emerged from the banner and gradually entered his body. Absorbing the power of souls manifested. The souls of those 3 CP0 members and thousands of elite Marines now formed an immense and chaotic torrent of information. Countless fragmented memories and battle experiences relentlessly surged into his consciousness. In an instant, Lin Yi's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. This was different from the soul form of Ride and the others. They directly devoured and merged, simple and brutal. He, on the other hand, had to absorb in his physical form, digesting and refining bit by bit. Otherwise, a moment of carelessness, and his mind would be overwhelmed by this terrifying information flow, turning him into a complete idiot. Just as Lin Yi was fully focused, battling the tumultuous waves in his consciousness, a new slaughter had already begun on the distant shore, a bloody prelude unfolding. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Prepare for battle! A Marine officer shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice hoarse from screaming. On the shore, the elite Marine soldiers, who had been preparing for battle, instantly fell into chaos. But being elites, they quickly adjusted their mindset after the brief disorder, swiftly forming a battle formation to face the enemy. However, what they faced were not enemies that could be understood by conventional logic. The Elite Five, those 5 towering figures, appeared instantaneously like ghosts. Attack! Open fire! Fire the cannons! Countless commands were issued simultaneously, and a hail of bullets and cannon fire rained down, forming an impenetrable wall of steel. However, the next second, a bizarre scene unfolded that left all the Marines wide-eyed. The attacks that could tear through steel actually passed right through the spectral bodies of the Elite Five, causing not a single bit of harm. How is this possible? Are they ghosts? Terror and despair spread like a plague among the Marine ranks, and the carefully organized formation instantly became disorganized. The Elite Five paid no heed to the wails of these ants. Their eyes remained filled with killing intent, like 5 tigers charging into a flock of sheep, their blades rising and falling. Thud! Ah! Screams echoed everywhere, and blood instantly stained the pristine sand. Don't panic! A furious roar resonated like thunder through the chaotic crowd. Bogard's figure emerged steadily from the warship, like a stabilizing force. He had just settled the 3 severely injured vice admirals and now locked his sharp, eagle-like gaze onto the 5 rampaging figures. Those who can use hockey, step forward. Attack with armament hockey. As soon as he spoke, nearly 100 colonels and dozens of rear admirals stepped forward in unison. Yes, sir. Though their faces still bore traces of panic, their eyes held the steadfast resolve of soldiers. Buzz! Armament hockey instantly enveloped their weapons, gleaming with a black luster. Bogard did not hesitate, drawing his sword with a swift whoosh. A heavy and fierce armament hockey covered the entire blade. His gaze locked onto the leader of the Elite Five, number 1. Kill! With an explosive shout, he lunged forward like lightning, his sword slashing down in a streak of light. Clang! Number 1 did not back down, his long sword, also infused with hockey, clashed fiercely. Swords clashed, sparks flew, and the sound of metal against metal rang painfully in the ears. Bogard, after all, was Monkey D. Garp's second in command, his strength formidable. After a few fierce exchanges, Number 1 was forced back several meters by the powerful force. Seeing this, Number 2 swiftly moved to assist, joining forces with Number 1 to attack Bogard. Meanwhile, Numbers 3, 4, and 5 were intercepted by the nearly 100 colonels and dozens of rear admirals. In an instant, blades clashed, and hockey collided. The entire shoreline fell into a strange, brutal stalemate. 2 days and 2 nights passed like this. Elsewhere, on the battlefield now turned into an icy expanse, the fight between Akiji and Golden Lion Shiki had reached a white-hot stage. Bang! 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 Akiji fought like a madman. He paid no heed to his injuries, his fists relentlessly pounding Shiki like an unending tide. His body was covered in deep, bone-visible gashes, his tattered marine uniform hanging like rags, and dried blood stained the corners of his mouth. But his eyes burned with a fury and resolve colder and more piercing than the surrounding ice. "Bastard! I will definitely kill you all," he growled hoarsely, each punch carrying the determination to obliterate his opponent. In contrast, Shiki was in worse shape. His old wounds on his head and feet had not healed, and the relentless high-intensity battles over the past 2 days and nights had depleted his already meager haki. Damn it! Shiki watched as the once black armament haki on his two named swords, Sakuraju and Deadwood, flickered and finally dissipated. He tried to gather it again, but no matter how hard he pushed, that familiar power would not return. His Flutter Fruit's awakened domain had also dissipated a day earlier, unable to be maintained. Now, his entire body felt heavy as lead, even maintaining flight was difficult. Shiki abruptly ascended, distancing himself from Akiji in a sorry state. His spectral form was riddled with wounds from haki, his face swollen and bruised, looking like a stray dog. "Ice? Ice boy, have you gone mad?" he panted, his voice filled with frustration and anger. Akiji, though also covered in wounds, maintained an icy aura, his condition clearly better than Shiki's. He looked up at the pathetic figure in the sky, his eyes filled with bone-chilling killing intent. "Shiki! You can't escape!" Akiji's voice was as cold as ice, each word stabbing into Shiki's heart. "Damn bastard!" Shiki roared, his eyes turning blood-red. He channeled his last remaining strength into his arms, crossing his swords Sakuraju and Deadwood. /wave. Chapter 66, Lin Yi breaks through to Admiral level, Zephyr arrives. Damn, just a little bit short. Lin Yi sat cross-legged on the ground, his jaw clenched so tightly it made a grinding sound. The energy within his body had long since converged into a surging river, repeatedly crashing against that invisible barrier. But that damnable thin film, which seemed like it could be pierced with a poke, was as tough as sticky toffee, sending his surging energy softly rebounding every time. 3 CP0 agents, thousands of elite marines, was this vast soul energy still not enough? Patrick Redfield heard Lin Yi's inner turmoil, frowned slightly, and immediately turned to rush toward the coast. However, as he left, he extended his observation haki to its maximum range, keeping a constant watch on Lin Yi's surroundings. Meanwhile, on the coastline of the Marine Supply Base, the smell of blood was so thick it felt palpable. "Hold the line. All of you, hold the line." A Marine officer roared until his voice cracked, but as soon as his words fell, a streak of pitch-black blade light flashed past his side, slicing him directly in half. The situation for the Elite Five, however, was also precarious. They were covered in blood, their spiritual bodies riddled with wounds large and small. Every swing of their blades seemed to lack strength. And at their feet lay the corpses of over 1,000 elite Marines, among them dozens of officers and more than 10 rear admirals. But what did that matter? Looking around, in every direction, there was still a dense, overwhelming mass, the fearless, endless tide of Marines. Put. Number 1 accidentally let his guard down and had his spiritual body pierced by a military saber wrapped in armament haki by Bogard, staggering as he knelt to the ground. Number 1. The other 4 saw this and their eyes split with rage. They tried to rush forward to rescue him but were tightly entangled by even more Marines, completely unable to break free. Die, monster! More than a dozen Marine officers grinned menacingly, raising their weapons high, ready to dismember Number 1. Completely. Just at this critical moment. A voice, elegant yet carrying a hint of laziness, yet chillingly devoid of any emotion, sounded faintly behind them. A group of noisy ants. Swish. No one saw how the figure appeared. They only saw a scarlet, blood-red parasol slowly opening in their vision. Immediately following that, several terrifying sword auras, stretching for 1,000 meters, silently swept across the entire battlefield like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. What? Time seemed to have been pressed into mute at that moment. The expressions of thousands of elite Marines were frozen in ferocity and shock. In the next second, their bodies, like cheese being sliced, were uniformly severed into two pieces. Blood jetted skyward like a fountain and then rained down like a torrential storm, completely dyeing the beach a shocking dark red. It was Patrick Redfield. He was still in that elegant and refined manner, not a single speck of blood staining the hem of his clothes. He merely held the umbrella and slowly walked up to the Elite Five. Lord Patrick Redfield. The heavily wounded number 1 struggled to get up but was held up by a gentle force. Return to Lin Ye's side, Patrick Redfield said lightly. Yes. The 5 dared not disobey in the slightest, replying in unison. Supporting each other, they staggered back toward Lin Ye's location. The solitary red. Burndy whirled, Patrick Redfield. Bogard stood in the distance, watching the figure that resembled a demon god, gritting his teeth in anger, his knuckles turning white from clenching his fists. But he dared not move. Reason told him that charging forward would only result in death. Patrick Redfield glanced at him, just about to raise his hand to clean up the remaining Marines as well. Suddenly, his movement paused. His deep eyes looked towards the distant sea horizon. In his perception from observation hockey, a warship was cutting through the waves at an astonishing speed. And the powerful, steady, mountain-like aura on the ship. Patrick Redfield looked at the sea with some gravity. Immediately, he stopped paying attention to Bogard and the defeated remnants, instead forcefully planting the red umbrella in his hand onto the ground. Buzz! An invisible aura of supreme dominion, mixed with pure soul power, surged out like a tsunami. Haoshaku! The souls of the more than 2,000 elite Marines, officers, and rear admirals who had just died in battle were forcibly stripped from their corpses by this tyrannical power. Countless pale white soul forms let out silent wails in the air. Go! Patrick Redfield gave a slight flick of his wrist. That vast army of souls, like sheep driven by a shepherd dog, surged forward in a rush toward Lin Ye's location. Boom! Like 100 rivers merging into the sea. All thousands of souls submerged into the 10,000 souls banner beside Lin Ye. Lin Ye, who was struggling to break through the bottleneck, suddenly felt an unprecedented, pure, and massive energy, like water from an open floodgate, violently pouring into his nearly depleted energy pool. It's here! He was ecstatic in his heart and no longer hesitated, guiding this new power to launch the final, most violent impact against that barrier. Refine. Refine crazily. For him, who was on the verge of breaking through, there was no need to patiently sort these low-level souls. He converted them all in one go into the most primitive essence of energy. Before long, all the souls were refined away by him. Break for me, break! Lin Yi roared silently in his heart. Crack! A crisp shattering sound, seemingly existing only deep within the soul, rang out. That barrier which had troubled him for so long finally shattered. Boom! A terrifying aura, more than 10 times stronger than before, erupted from Lin Ye's body like an awakened ancient giant dragon. The entire island seemed to tremble slightly because of this momentum. Admiral. Level. He succeeded. It was at this moment that the warship speeding in from the distance finally arrived at the coast. Ice field battlefield. /wave. Golden Lion Shiki turned his last bit of strength into a minuscule sword aura and slashed toward Akiji. Ice glove. Akiji, expressionless, shattered that sword aura effortlessly with a punch covered in armament hockey. Moonwalk. Bang. 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 The explosive sounds of stomping the air exploded around Shiki's ears like the drumbeat of death. Akiji's figure flickered continuously, closing in rapidly with an unreasonable posture. Don't come closer. Shiki was truly panicking. He kept unleashing sword auras, but those attacks were as fragile as paper in front of Akiji and were shattered one by one. Finally, Akiji's figure appeared in front of Shiki. His usually lazy face now held only icy killing intent. Behind him, it seemed as if countless days and nights surfaced the time he spent training his punches one by one on abandoned warships with Mr. Garp. In the end, all the scenes focused on the Iron Fist condensed with the ultimate armament hockey. Fist bone. Akiji's gaze locked onto Shiki's terrified face. Combo. In an instant, a sky full of fist shadows. Countless fists condensed with terrifying force hammered down on Shiki's body like a violent storm. Bang! 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 Shiki only managed to block the first few punches before he could no longer keep up with Akiji's extremely fast punching speed. He could only watch as those iron fists smashed into his chest, abdomen, and face, one after another. His spiritual body was battered backward, and the light visibly dimmed at a visible rate. Final blow. Akiji gathered his strength again, condensing all his anger and power into a single punch, which he violently slammed into Shiki's face. Boom! Shiki's entire body was sent plummeting from 10,000 meters high like a broken kite, hammered down by one punch. He crashed heavily onto the hard ice surface. Crack, crack, crack. The ice surface instantly fractured, spreading like a spider web and kicking up countless shards of ice. Akiji's figure also slowly descended from the sky, standing steadily on the ice. His chest rose and fell violently. The high-intensity battle had almost drained all his physical strength. He had only recently become an admiral, far from the monster who could fight Akainu for 10 days and 10 nights over a decade later. He gasped for breath, dragging his exhausted body, and walked step by step toward the dying Shiki lying in the ice crater, preparing to deliver the final strike. Just then, whoosh! A sword aura of incomparable power silently sliced through the sky, shooting toward the back of Akiji's heart. Akiji's pupils constricted, and he was just about to dodge. Boom! A body as thick as a mountain descended from the sky, landing heavily in front of him. The wrist wrapped in extremely dense armament haki was casually clenched. And the sword aura, powerful enough to cleave mountains and crack stones, was forcibly crushed. Zay? Teacher Zephyr? Akiji looked at the familiar back and cried out. Black Arm Zephyr had arrived. He slowly turned around, his solemn and resolute face filled with gravity. At the end of his line of sight, two figures were slowly walking out. Lin Yi, and beside him, Patrick Redfield, who was holding the red umbrella. Chapter 67, First Display of Might, severely injuring Akiji. Lin Yi's gaze was like a searchlight, fixed intently on the man's right arm. It was a complete, sturdy arm, wrapped in muscle as hard as steel. Black Arm Zephyr. Lin Yi silently recited the name, the timeline in his mind spinning rapidly. It is now Marine Era 1508. This means there are still a full 5 years before Teacher Zephyr's arm is cut off by that idiot Weevil. He is currently in his absolute prime, a pure Marine who has not yet been betrayed by the Navy or grown disheartened. The strength of a veteran admiral, absolutely. Lin Ye's gaze drifted to the side of Zephyr, where Akiji was gasping heavily, covered in cold mist. TSK, at present, Teacher Zephyr doesn't have any students dragging him down by his side. Wait. Lin Yi looked at Akiji's health bar, which was nearly depleted from being worn down by Shiki, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up wildly. It seems, the current one is also quite the burden. Does this mean Teacher Zephyr is doomed to be burdened by his students his entire life? Ha 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 ha. An unrestrained burst of laughter sounded particularly jarring on this icy battlefield. Zephyr, who was looking solemn and wary of Patrick Redfield, was startled by the sudden laughter, and his brows furrowed even tighter. Lin Yi realized he had lost his composure, especially after seeing the miserable state of Shiki in the ice pit nearby, breathing in more than out, his soul flickering dimly, about to vanish. His smile instantly vanished. The main business was important. He raised his chin and issued a concise and clear order to Patrick Redfield beside him. Save him. Patrick Redfield tilted his scarlet parasol slightly, and his entire body shot out like a red lightning bolt, without any warning, straight towards Zephyr and Akiji. The solitary red. Patrick Redfield. Zephyr roared out that thunderous name, his pupils instantly contracting. Sengoku had informed him of the situation before he arrived, and he was fully mentally prepared. But when this legendary man truly appeared before him, the overwhelming, solitary aura that seemed intent on crushing the entire world underfoot still made him feel immense pressure. This was the monster who won a one-on-one fight against Fleet Admiral Steelbone Kong. If he hadn't been weakened afterward and Garp hadn't taken advantage of the situation, this guy might have already created the mythical achievement of soloing a fleet admiral and leaving safely. No time to think. Patrick Redfield's figure arrived in an instant. The red umbrella in his hand was currently more terrifying than any divine weapon in the world. A layer of pitch-black armament hockey wrapped around it like boiling liquid, the tip of the umbrella aimed directly at Zephyr's heart. Ha! Zephyr roared out, not showing weakness in the slightest. His proud iron arms were instantly covered in equally thick armament hockey, crossed in front of his chest, forcefully blocking the attack. Bang! The collision between the umbrella tip and the arms did not result in the clash of metal, but an extremely dull, massive boom. Black and red lightning danced wildly between the two like venomous snakes, emitting a harsh sizzling sound. The thick, hard ice beneath their feet could not withstand the terrifying clash of hockey. It shattered like glass struck by a heavy hammer, cracking open with dense, web-like fissures. Now was the moment. Taking advantage of the instant Zephyr was firmly entangled by Patrick Redfield, Lin Yi moved. He gripped his blade and aimed clearly at the weakened Akiji. After his strength broke through, he needed to find a sufficiently weighty quality inspector to test his new power. Damn it! Akiji cursed inwardly. Facing this sudden attack, he could only frantically condense his cold energy into an ice blade, also coating it with armament hockey, to hastily parry. But he had expended too much stamina fighting Shiki, and he was completely lacking in strength now. Clang! 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 Lin Yi was excited like a child who had just received a new toy. The long sword in his hand transformed into a torrential downpour of slashes, pouring down on Akiji wildly and recklessly. Every slash was a venting of new power. Every slash was an experience of admiral-level strength. Akiji was forced to retreat steadily by this unreasonable fast assault. The web of his hand was already split open, blood flowing freely. After barely resisting dozens of ferocious chops. Crack! A crisp sound. The ice blade in his hand finally could not bear the strain and was cleanly split in two by Lin Yi. Akiji's pupils instantly shrank to the size of pinpricks. The deadly blade edge grazed past the tip of his nose. Without thinking, he executed an extreme backward lean, dodging the gut-slicing strike, and immediately retreated explosively. Ice ball. As he retreated, he flung both hands, and several ice balls condensed with extreme cold energy whistled out like cannonballs towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't even look, instinctively slashing out with his sword. Hiss! The moment the blade edge contacted the ice ball, an extreme cold energy frantically spread along the blade. In the blink of an eye, his entire sword was completely sealed by a thick layer of solid ice, and even his arm began to frost over. That bone-chilling cold instantly spread throughout his body. Humph! Lin Yi grunted, violently shaking his arm. Armament hockey erupted, shattering the solid ice directly. As expected of a Navy admiral. This Logia ability is truly enviable. He praised verbally, but his actions became even more ruthless. He gripped the sword with both hands, and boundless bloodlust began to condense on his sword edge. Shura, Netherworld. With a low shout, several streaks of pitch-black sword energy carrying dense bloodlust roared out like demons crawling from the depths of hell, slashing towards Akiji. Where the sword energy passed, even the air seemed to be stained with a faint scarlet hue. Akiji felt as if the blood in his entire body was being agitated by that sinister power, as if it wanted to burst out of his body. He dared not be careless, focusing with all his might, tightly gripping his fists, condensing all his remaining armament hockey onto them. Fist bone impact. An immense impact force transformed into a pure punch of energy, fiercely blasting towards those few streaks of blood-colored sword energy. Boom! The two powerful forces violently collided in mid-air. They only held for less than 3 seconds. Akiji's punch energy, condensed with his final strength, was completely sliced apart and divided with a poof, like tofu cut by a sharp blade. Not good. Akiji's expression changed drastically. He watched helplessly as two sword energy streaks he couldn't dodge in time landed squarely on his chest. Poochie! Although he condensed armament hockey on his chest to resist at the last moment, that incomparably sharp sword energy instantly broke through his defense. Two deep, bone-revealing gashes crossed over his chest. Splattered blood soared several meters high. Ah! Ah! Akiji could no longer hold back, letting out a miserable scream that sounded inhuman. The pain coming from the wounds was not simply the pain of being struck, but it felt as if countless invisible specters were frantically tearing at his flesh and soul with sharp fangs and claws. Blood poured out uncontrollably. That pain piercing to the bone made his consciousness begin to blur. Kuzan. Zephyr, who was fiercely battling Patrick Redfield, felt his heart tremble violently upon hearing the scream. Without thinking, he delivered a heavy punch condensing all his strength, forcefully pushing Patrick Redfield back several meters. Then, his figure flashed, instantly appearing behind the tottering Akiji and catching him. Looking at the two terrifying wounds on Akiji's chest, from which black blood was constantly surging, Zephyr's usually resolute face showed panic for the first time. Kuzan. How are you? Teacher. Teacher Zephyr. Akiji forced himself to squeeze out a few words. I'm fine. But his face, instantly pale as paper, and the large beads of cold sweat constantly forming on his forehead mercilessly exposed his extremely terrible condition at the moment. Patrick Redfield's figure silently appeared beside Lin Yi. Lin Yi did not choose to pursue immediately to beat a drowning dog. His gaze swept past Zephyr and Akiji, landing on the heavily injured and unconscious golden lion nearby, whose soul was flickering like a candle in the wind, threatening to extinguish at any moment. Without a word, he activated the 10,000 Souls banner. A faint black banner shadow instantly flew out, and before the dim soul could completely dissipate, it was snatched and collected by the banner. Chapter 68, The Battle Ends. Just then, two figures appeared as if out of thin air, one on the left and one on the right, at the edge of the battlefield. One was an old man wearing a cloak of justice and a dog-headed hat. The other was a man with a nose mustache, smiling like a fool. Garp and Roger had arrived. Each of them was carrying something, looking like they were dragging two broken sacks. Garp glanced up and saw Akiji, who was protected by Zephyr, his chest a bloody mess. Garp's usually carefree face instantly darkened. Kuzan. He rushed to Zephyr's side, casually tossing the sack in his hand to the side. With a dull thud, the sack rolled on the ground, revealing a face covered in dust and blood. It was Akainu, who had passed out. Hold on. Garp didn't even glance at Akainu, immediately kneeling on one knee, a surge of pure conqueror's haki flowing from his palm, carefully covering Akiji's wound. The relentless spectral sword energy that had been corroding Akiji's flesh met its match in Garp's overpowering conqueror's haki, letting out a hissing sound as it was forcefully dispersed. Ugh! Akiji groaned, his pale face regaining a hint of color. He quickly activated his devil fruit ability, using ice to temporarily freeze the wound and stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Roger also put down the sack he was carrying. It was Bullet. He wasn't in much better shape, his spectral form covered in burns from the magma, but at least he was conscious. He looked at Lin Yi, his lips moving as if he wanted to say something. That's enough, don't talk. Lin Yi cut him off, a relieved smile appearing on his face. You've done well. Bullet, go back to the 10,000 Souls banner and get some rest. As soon as he finished speaking, Bullet's figure turned into a stream of light and was absorbed back into the banner. Lin Yi sensed the weakened auras of Shiki, Bullet, and the Elite Five, who were severely injured within the 10,000 Souls banner. He helplessly pursed his lips. Great, half of our combat power is now in the ICU. His gaze then fell on Roger, who was inexplicably in good condition, even picking his nose. Damn, seriously. Lin Yi twitched. Old Roger, you and Garp were making quite the racket these past few days, throwing around Conqueror's haki like it was free. How come you both look like you just went for a jog? He looked Roger up and down, his voice filled with suspicion. You two weren't fighting for real, were you? Ha 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 ha. Roger laughed loudly, slapping his chest. Of course not. We fought very intensely. Look at this injury on my face, it's still not healed. Lin Yu rolled his eyes, not bothering to argue. That injury was clearly from the first day when Garp punched him. Apart from that bruise, Roger didn't have a scratch on him. In fact, a few days ago, on the first day, Roger and Garp indeed fought fiercely, shaking the heavens and the earth. But by the second day, Garp's anger had mostly subsided. Then, the scene became strange. The two supposed mortal enemies found a clean spot and sat down side by side. To avoid arousing suspicion from others far away, they occasionally threw out attacks laced with Conqueror's Haki, creating some gods fighting special effects. Then Garp, like a wronged wife finding a confidant, put his arm around Roger's shoulder and started pouring out his grievances about raising kids over the years. Let me tell you, Ace, that kid is really a handful. Last time, he stole all of Sengoku's liquor and fed it to the fish, almost giving the old man a stroke. And he even learned to pick his nose like me. Ha 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 ha. Isn't he just like my grandson? Roger laughed heartily, tears almost coming out. The joy of reuniting with an old friend had long since washed away any sense of opposition. Later, they even caught a few wild beasts, roasted meat, and chatted while eating, enjoying themselves immensely. After that, with nothing better to do, they wandered over to watch Bullet and Akaina's battle, becoming mere spectators. Those two brutes fought like it was a performance art. Punch for punch, each blow landing on flesh. The two tough guys used their faces to take each other's attacks, leaving even Roger and Garp, the old foxes, in awe. Finally, on the last day, as they finished their roasted meat, the battle over there also reached its climax. Hellhound. 100-fold power. Both men charged up, their fists covered in terrifying energy, slamming into each other's faces. Akaino took the amplified power and passed out on the spot. Bullet took the magma fist covered in dense armament Haki, his face burned black, staggering before collapsing to his knees, barely conscious. Thus, Garp and Roger each carried their respective allies back. The memory ended. Garp looked at the devastated shoreline and the severely injured admirals, his iron fists clenching tightly. Bogard! He suddenly turned around and let out a deafening roar. Bogard, who was reporting the situation to Sengoku via a transponder snail, was startled and rushed over, not daring to look Garp in the eye. Bogard! What the hell happened? Why did the Marine fleet land on the island? I am sorry. Vice Admiral Garp. Bogard's voice trembled. IT was the world government's CP0, Why would the world government get involved? Garp's fury was palpable. Garp. Just then, a calm female voice came from the transponder snail. It was Vice Admiral Tsuru. It was us who notified them to support you. We didn't expect CP0 would completely disregard the lives of the Marine elites and order the fleet to land. I'm sorry, Garp. On the other end of the video transponder snail, Vice Admiral Tsuru and Sengoku watched the transmitted scene, their hearts heavy. Little Tsuru? Garp was taken aback. Hearing this explanation, his anger subsided significantly. He was silent for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and looked at Bogard again, his voice hoarse. Our Marine fleet, how many casualties? Bogard's body trembled, but he quickly stood at attention and reported loudly. Reporting to Vice Admiral Garp. Our Marine fleet has suffered. Just say it. Garp impatiently barked. Yes. Bogard closed his eyes, as if mustering all his strength, and shouted, Our Marine headquarters Vice Admiral, 7 dead. 3 severely injured and unconscious. Marine elites, nearly 7,000 casualties. What? Ha? This number struck like a thunderbolt, hitting every Marine present right in the heart. Garp, Zephyr, and Sengoku and Vice Admiral Tsuru on the other end of the transponder snail all fell into a deathly silence. Unbelievable. How could this be? Sengoku's murmur came from the transponder snail. With Admirals Akiji and Sakazuki severely injured, the Marines' losses are actually so great. Ah-ha-ha. Garp could no longer suppress his grief and anger, letting out a beastly roar. He suddenly turned around, his eyes instantly turning blood red, glaring at Lin Yi and the others. Black haki, like boiling flames, wrapped around his fists. Garp! Stop! Sengoku's urgent shout came from the transponder snail just in time. Do you want Akiji and Sakazuki to die with them? Garp's fist, about to strike, froze in midair. Indeed. The enemy still had Roger, Redfield, and Lin Yi, who had just reached Admiral-level strength. He and Zephyr could at most hold off Roger and Redfield. But what about Lin Yi? Could Bogart and the remaining Marine elite stop him? Akiji and Sakazuki were already out of the fight. If they fought now, the two of them would likely be killed by Lin Yi on the spot, losing 2 more Marine admirals. That would be an unprecedented humiliation for the Marines since their establishment. Marine headquarters would be crippled. Let it go, Garp. Sengoku's voice was filled with exhaustion and helplessness. Take Akiji and Sakazuki and withdraw. The boiling haki on Garp's fist slowly subsided. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, the fury had been suppressed, leaving only endless coldness. Retreat. That single word seemed to drain all his strength. Bogart and the others, as if pardoned, quickly carried the 2 severely injured admirals and headed towards the warships on the shore. Lin Yi watched the Marines retreating in disarray, instinctively gripping his blade tightly. At that moment, a hand gently rested on his shoulder. It was Roger. He looked at Lin Yi and shook his head slightly. Don't push the Marines to their limit. Roger's voice was soft but clear to Lin Yi. Our true enemy is not them. Lin Yi's grip on his blade slowly relaxed. Indeed. The true enemy was the high and mighty world government and the celestial dragons. As for the Marines, most of them were just tools, oppressed by the world government, trying to uphold their pitiful sense of justice. Chapter 69, The Grand Gift Package Sent by Vast Waves. Big News. This is earth-shattering big news. At the headquarters of the World Economic News Agency, the president, Big Newsmorgans, shook his iconic albatross head excitedly, his wings flapping pat-pat on the desk, shaking the photos scattered on top into the air. Fantastic! This news will surely make the entire world boil over. Ha 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 ha! His sharp bird eyes stared intently at the scattered photos on the table. One photo showed the exceedingly arrogant flying pirate Golden Lion Shiki, surrounded by numerous elite Marines, confronting the Admiral Akiji. Another showed inheritor of the Oni bullet, trading blows with Admiral Akainu, fist against flesh. A third showed that umbrella-wielding man, Patrick Redfield, elegantly thrusting toward the former Admiral Zephyr. And one photo depicted the legendary pirate king Gold Roger and the Marine hero Garp, both grinning widely against a backdrop of cracked earth. The most shocking was a panoramic view. 2 heavily injured, unconscious admirals, scattered Marine vice-admirals, and the devastated Marine supply base littered with corpses. And facing them was the man named Lin Yi, and behind him, the monsters resembling gods and demons. Morgan's breathing became heavy. He shifted his gaze away from a photo showing the tragic deaths of 3 CP-0 agents, casually tossing it aside. CP-0. Forget it, they are minor characters in this incident. It's not worth offending those lingering shadows of the world government over them right now. He picked up a transponder snail and roared into the receiver at his subordinate with a tone of unquestionable fanaticism, immediately. Drop all other tasks at hand. Mass print this newspaper with all your might. Disperse this news to every corner of the world at the fastest speed possible. Meanwhile, at the Marine supply base that had already turned into ruins, Lin Yi kicked a charred piece of ship plank away, muttering curses, spittle flying. Damn Marines, they really leave us no way out. Another ship is scrapped. He looked at his pirate ship, now reduced to a pile of junk, and felt a sharp pang of heartache. How was he supposed to get back now? Roger, standing nearby, was leisurely picking his ear with his little finger. Hearing this, he blew out a breath, glanced sideways at Lin Yi, and said lazily, "Aren't you forgetting something?" Forgetting something? Lin Yi was stunned. Where is your pet? Ha? Pet? Lin Yi's mind suddenly sparked as if an electric current had passed through it. Right, vast waves. Damn it! Where did that heartless vast waves run off to? While we were fighting desperately up there, where was it slacking off? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He immediately closed his eyes, connected the soul frequency with vast waves, and urged the guy with his mental power to hurry up and come pick him up. Not long after. Rumble, rumble. The distant sea suddenly began to churn violently, as if some colossal entity was about to rise from the seabed. A massive, suffocating shadow slowly surfaced from the deep blue water. If it wasn't vast waves, who else could it be? Seeing the leisurely figure, Lin Ye's anger flared up again. He stomped his foot hard, launching himself hundreds of meters into the air like a cannonball. He landed precisely next to Vast Wave's smooth forehead, raised his hand, and delivered a heavy, powerful slap to its head. Slap! The sound was crisp and loud. Where the hell did you run off to? We were fighting for our lives on the island, and you couldn't even bother to come help? Ing Vast Waves cried out aggrievedly in pain, its two huge pectoral fins rubbing its ringing head like human hands. You dare act like a winner! Seeing its appearance, Lin Yi became even angrier and raised his hand intending to strike again. Vast Waves flinched in fright, its survival instinct instantly maxed out, and it quickly opened its giant mouth capable of swallowing a small island. The next second, a scene that left everyone present dumbfounded occurred. Ugh! Accompanied by a sound like dry heaving, countless pale white souls radiating majestic auras poured out of its mouth like a bursting dam. A sea king shaped like a giant serpent hundreds of meters long. A sea king shaped like an octopus 1,000 meters in size. Dense and layered, in the blink of an eye, they gathered on the sea surface before them into an endless ocean composed of souls. Lin Ye's hand, which was raised mid-air, froze just like that. Roger and Patrick Redfield were also too shocked to speak. Holy crap! Lin Yi stammered, pointing at that sea of souls, then pointing at Vast Wave's mouth. How did you fit so many Sea King souls in your mouth? Jojo Vast Waves chirped proudly a few times, explaining through mental fluctuations. I don't know either. While I was playing deep in the sea of the Calm Belt, I suddenly heard something calling me. I followed the sound and found a graveyard composed entirely of Sea King skeletons. When I saw that quite a few souls were still lingering in those skeletons, I couldn't resist and started swallowing them little by little. As I ate, some things were inexplicably stuffed into my brain, and then I gained this ability. Now, no matter how many things there are, I can swallow them all. After speaking, it proudly raised its head, wearing an expression that begged, praise me, praise me. Lin Yi looked at Vast Waves, whose body length had already ballooned to 5,000 or 6,000 meters, making it look more and more like the Kuzan from the myths and legends of his previous life. The corner of his mouth twitched. He stared at Vast Waves and narrowed his eyes. So, all these Sea King souls are leftovers from what you ate? No. Boss. Vast Waves immediately became guilty upon hearing this, its huge fins constantly fanning itself, its eyes darting elsewhere. These are all carefully selected nutrients I specially brought back for you. Seeing Vast Wave's clumsy and laughable expression of lying, Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to argue with it anymore. This guy's luck was indeed heaven-defying. It seemed to have awakened some kind of space-related innate talent to be able to contain so many Sea King souls. Lin Yi stopped overthinking and directly summoned the 10,000 souls banner, beginning to count these nutrient gift packages one by one, storing each one as he counted. Finally, half an hour later. Holy crap! Lin Yi couldn't help but curse as he looked at the spectacular sight inside the 10,000 souls banner. There are over 200 Sea Kings. Although most are in the hundreds of meters range, with only a dozen or so in the 1,000-meter range, the largest one is over 4,000 meters long. The lingering anger in his heart had long been completely washed away by this sudden surprise. Ha 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 ha. I really misjudged you, Vast Waves. Lin Yi laughed heartily and reached out to stroke Vast Wave's smooth chin. I was just wondering where to collect soul nutrients to help Bullet and Shiki recover, and you delivered them just in time. Not bad. Not bad. Gio. Vast waves, praised by Lin Yi, jerked happily like a few hundred-ton child, its Cardi B big eyes squinting into slits from smiling. Lin Yi leaped up again, jumping onto Vast Wave's head. Roger and Patrick Redfield followed closely behind. Let's go. We'll head back now to see how our new ship is being built. Lin Yi waved his hand spiritedly. Set sail. Chapter 70, Shocking Carl for 100 years, the ship spirit is ready. Ding clang, deep within the cave, the dull yet rhythmic sound of hammering iron echoed regularly, like the heartbeat of some tireless giant beast. A figure walked in from the blinding light at the cave entrance, slicing the light into irregular shapes. Lin Yi walked in with his hands in his pockets, his gait utterly self-assured, a smug smile plastered on his face, anticipating the shocked expressions of others. He cleared his throat and roared toward the depths of the cavern, putting all his vital energy into it. Old man Carl. I'm here, damn it. Ting-ling-dang. The rhythmic sound of iron hammering in the cave instantly became chaotic, like a duck whose neck had been squeezed, eventually dissolving into a series of harsh metal collisions. Which blind bastard? An enraged roar approached quickly, and immediately after, a burly figure carrying a hammer larger than a human head rushed out from behind the firelight of the forging station. The shipwright Carl, at this moment, resembled an angered bear, his entire beard trembling with his heavy gasps. Seeing this, Lin Yi chuckled. Far from dodging, he walked right up to meet him. Just a second before Carl's massive hammer could swing down onto his forehead, he flipped his wrist. Old man Carl, don't rush to action. Take a look at this person. Buzz. A soul aura, ancient, vast, and as mighty as the boundless ocean, instantly filled the entire cave without any warning. The air seemed to solidify at that moment. The soul of an old man with white hair and beard, dressed in ancient nautical attire, appeared out of thin air. His ethereal form carried a heaviness that seemed capable of crushing the entire space. As Gyuller appeared, he bowed slightly and looked at Lin Yi, his voice ancient and steady. Captain, have we arrived at the place to build our ship? Yes. Lin Yi nodded, then looked at Carl with an amused expression. However, Carl could no longer hear what they were saying. This stubborn, one-armed shipwright, who had been so his entire life, was now staring intently, fiercely, at the soul of Gyuller. His one remaining good left hand subconsciously let go of the giant hammer in his grip. Clang! The huge hammer crashed heavily onto the rocky floor, letting out a piercing clang. But Carl was completely oblivious. His cloudy eyes were wide open like brass bells. His eyeballs were almost popping out of their sockets. His mouth was slightly agape, and the expression on his face was a complex mixture of shock, ecstasy, disbelief, and the feeling of seeing a ghost. This is... His voice was hoarse and trembling, as if an invisible hand were clutching his throat. He could clearly sense the aura within this soul, an ancient vastness originating from the sea itself, as if baptized by 1,000 years of wind and waves. This is simply a heartborn for the atom tree. Perfect. No. Even more perfect than perfect. How is it, old man? Seeing Carl's thunderstruck expression, Lin Yi felt incredibly satisfied, yet he maintained a casual demeanor. Does this heart meet your standards? As he spoke, he walked over to the massive, dark gold keel that resembled the ribcage of a prehistoric giant beast. This keel, forged from the atom tree, exuded an innate dominance just by lying there quietly. After Carl's initial processing over the past few days, the natural grain on the wood's surface seemed imbued with a kind of vitality, flowing slowly under the reflection of the forging furnace's firelight, mysterious and magnificent. Carl said nothing. He merely took a step, then another, walking toward the soul of Gyuller as if he were a devout believer approaching a sacred relic. He extended his left hand, covered in calluses and scars, trembling slightly, seemingly wanting to touch the ethereal figure, but stopping halfway in the air. His eyes were filled with the obsession and reverence of a top craftsman seeing a peerless treasure. After a long pause, he suddenly turned his head, his bloodshot eyes locking onto Lin Yi, squeezing out one word at a time through gritted teeth. Boy, you truly are. He, keep it low-key, keep it low-key. Lin Yi cheerfully interrupted his praise. So, can we start now? Start. Now. Immediately. Right away. Carl seemed as if he had been injected with an entire barrel of potent stimulants. The man became completely frenzied. His right arm, which had only recently recovered, swung out violently, accompanied by a series of crackling bone sounds. All idle people. Get out of here for me. He roared toward the outside of the cave, then grabbed Lin Yi like a snatching a chick and dragged him to the core position of the keel. You. Stand here. Stabilize this soul. Leave the rest to me. Once this old man entered work mode, he completely transformed into an unquestionable tyrant. Lin Yi shrugged and complied. Bueller also looked solemn, floating in the air, ready. Lin Yi concentrated his spirit, slowly and steadily guiding the soul of Bueller directly above the center of the keel. Boy, listen carefully. Carl's voice became unprecedentedly serious. Integrating the soul into the atom tree is like transplanting a powerful heart into a newborn infant. The process absolutely cannot have the slightest error. Use your ability to transform his soul energy into the softest threads, one by one, wrapping them around the central nerve of the keel. As he spoke, he rapidly slapped the giant keel with his one arm. Every strike made the keel emit a soft buzz, as if responding to him. Right here. Do you feel it? This piece of wood is breathing. Fuse the soul into it. Got it. Lin Yi took a deep breath, his eyes slightly closed. The power of the 10,000 Souls banner was pushed to its extreme by him. Under his guidance, the soul of Bueller began to slowly transform, turning into billions of energy threads finer than spider silk, emitting a faint blue halo. These threads, as if possessing life, gently and slowly covered the massive dark gold keel below. Z. Zzzz. The moment the first thread of soul touched the keel, a faint sound, like an electric current passing through, echoed in the air. The entire keel trembled violently. Immediately afterward, its whole body emitted a soft, bright halo, like moonlight. It's reacting. Keep going. Carl's eyes flashed with fanatical light. Lin Yi dared not delay, focusing all his spirit, controlling the billions of soul threads to silently penetrate the wooden structure of the atom tree, bit by bit, like a spring breeze turning into rain. This process was tense and long. Only the crackling sound of the furnace fire burning and the zz sound of energy fusion remained in the cave. Fine beads of sweat gradually emerged on Lin Yi's forehead. It was unclear how long it took, perhaps an hour, perhaps 3 hours. When the last thread of soul had completely merged into the keel. Ooh! A long and heavy hum suddenly erupted from inside the keel. That sound didn't seem like something wood could produce, rather, it was like a giant whale that had slept for 1,000 years letting out a long cry upon waking in the deep sea. The entire keel burst into brilliant light. The wooden grain patterns, which had only been flowing slowly, now seemed to come alive, flashing and pulsating rapidly and rhythmically. Once, twice. Like a giant, powerfully beating heart. It's done! Carl let out an excited, hoarse roar, his entire body trembling with excitement. Lin Yi let out a long breath, feeling as if half his spiritual energy had been drained, and plopped down onto the ground. Looking at the keel before him, which was no longer a dead object but radiated infinite wisdom and life aura, Carl wiped the sweat that had beaded on his forehead from excitement and walked over to Lin Yi, heavily patting his shoulder. His gaze was complex, mixing the satisfaction of a craftsman achieving his life's goal with awe toward the miraculous creation before him. He pointed at the pitch-black giant ship, which had just taken shape but already possessed 1,000 years of wisdom, his sense of accomplishment beyond words. One day. Carl's voice carried a trace of fatigue, but more so, an irrepressible excitement. Give me one more day, and it will be ready to launch. Chapter 71, Golden Lion Shiki recovers his power. The next day, dawn had just broken. In the forest behind the shipwright Carl's workshop, the morning mist had not yet dissipated, and the air was filled with the scent of damp earth and green grass. Lin Yi, leading Roger and Redfield, leisurely found an open space. This will do, he said. He stretched, his bones crackling, then flipped his wrist to silently unfurl the jet-black 10,000 Souls banner. Buzz! Several figures were expelled from the banner by him, stumbling as they landed on the ground. It was none other than Bullet, Golden Lion, Shiki, and the Elite Five. Each of them had injuries on their spectral forms, burns, frostbite, or cracks. Their auras were weak and fluctuating. Especially Golden Lion Shiki, who was in the worst condition. His spectral energy was severely depleted, and even the old wound on his head began to ooze black mist, looking eerie. But this guy, his mouth was still tough. He shook his nearly transparent spectral form, forcing himself to stand straight. His characteristic wild laughter sounded weakly. Ha ha, just a minor setback. I'm fine. Even as he spoke, he couldn't help but cough violently, his spectral form flickering. If not for, if not for that damn old wound, that ice brat would have been crushed by now. Cough. Yeah, you're the strongest, the best. Lin Yi had a look of I believe you on his face, casually waving his hand. He quickly stepped forward to support Shiki, afraid this old guy would lose his breath and dissipate. He settled Shiki down and then turned to look at Bullet and the Elite Five. Though they were also covered in injuries, the fierce spirit in their eyes remained. They stood tall, like elementary school kids who refused to admit defeat even after a beating. All right, enough with the tough act. Lin Yi clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention. The reason I called you all out today is for one main purpose, to help you recover from your injuries. As soon as he finished speaking, he focused his mind. From the 10,000 Souls banner, a vast number of Sea King specters, emitting a powerful life force, surged out like a flash flood, instantly filling the entire open space. These specters were all hundreds of meters long, and their dense spectral energy instantly dispersed the morning mist. The injured specters' eyes widened. Their gaze was like that of a wolf that hadn't eaten for 3 days and 3 nights, suddenly seeing an entire flock of sheep. Green and gleaming. Feast. At Lin Yi's command. These guys couldn't hold back any longer. Like ravenous dogs, they eagerly rushed into the sea of specters, frantically absorbing the energy. In an instant, the entire forest was filled with surging spectral energy, and a strong wind kicked up. The Sea King's specters rapidly decreased and disappeared at a visible rate. The Elite Five, having the lightest injuries, recovered the fastest. In no time, the cracks on their spectral forms had healed, their auras becoming solid, even stronger than before. The burns on Bullet's body healed slowly under the nourishment of the vast spectral energy, like shedding a layer of dead skin. With his eyes closed, he felt the power surging within him. His clenched fists even had black armament hockey leaking out uncontrollably. In the end, only Golden Lion Shiki was left, still absorbing the energy slowly. His injuries were too severe, especially the old wounds on his head and feet, like bottomless pits, consuming a large amount of spectral energy without much improvement. Finally, all the 100-meter-long Sea King's specters were consumed. Shiki's condition had improved significantly. At least his spectral form was solid, no longer looking like he might dissipate at any moment. But Lin Yi's gaze fell on Shiki's empty ankles and the still grotesque hole in his head, his eyebrows furrowed tightly. This old wound was the root of the problem. Without resolving this, Shiki's power would never return to its peak. He gritted his teeth. Damn it, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. He made up his mind and once again activated the 10,000 Souls banner, releasing the big cargo brought back by vast waves, the specters of the giant Sea Kings over 1,000 meters long. Since that's the case, let's continue. Boom! A spectral energy 10 times more powerful than before surged through the scene like a tsunami. Shiki suddenly opened his eyes, seeing the top-tier ingredients emitting a terrifying aura in front of him. His eyes gleamed with wild joy. He hesitated no more, immediately focusing his mind and absorbing the energy with all his might. 1, 2. After absorbing nearly 10,000-meter-long Sea King specters, Shiki's body finally felt different. He felt an itch on his head. Not an ordinary itch, but the kind that felt like parched earth finally receiving spring rain, with new life about to burst forth, an itch that went straight to the bone. It felt like his brain was growing back. He resisted the urge to scratch, but in his heart, he was overjoyed, knowing that the old wound on his head was finally starting to truly heal. He increased his absorption speed. Soon after, his severed feet also began to itch intensely. Finally, the moment he completely absorbed over a dozen 1,000-meter-long Sea King's specter's buzz. Shiki's spectral form violently surged, and an unprecedented powerful energy exploded within him. The grotesque hole in his head rapidly healed and filled in under a golden light. At his empty ankles, flesh and bone, no, spectral substance rapidly regenerated. A pair of brand new, perfectly intact feet gradually grew back. As the light from his spectral form faded, Shiki slowly opened his eyes. He instinctively looked down, seeing those long-lost feet that belonged to him. He also instinctively touched his head, feeling a smooth and complete surface. He saw a complete, no longer broken version of himself. All the negative emotions from these years, the humiliation of being imprisoned and impelled down, the resentment of severing his own feet to survive, the loneliness of defeat by Roger, all melted away like snow in this moment. Ha 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 ha. A wild, domineering laugh filled with endless joy and heroism echoed through the sky. Boom! An extremely powerful conqueror's haki, like an ancient beast awakening, exploded from within him. That intangible, terrifying aura soared straight into the sky. The thick clouds in the sky were torn apart by this haki, revealing a massive hole. A beam of golden sunlight pierced through the gap in the clouds, shining directly down, illuminating Shiki's face filled with wild joy and arrogance. In the air, Roger looked at that golden lion who had not only regained his body but also his once indomitable spirit. A knowing smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He knew. The man who once rivaled him, who turned the world upside down, had returned. With the return of his aura, Golden Lion Shiki's conqueror's haki instantly increased several-fold. That pressure was now completely on par with Redfield and Bullet. These three monsters, if they were still alive, would have a bounty from the marine of no less than 40 billion berries. Definitely, Emperor-level power. Lin Yi, looking at Shiki's astonishing aura in the sky, was thrilled. His team had gained another powerful asset. Then, he turned his gaze to the last remaining specter in the 10,000 souls banner, the Super Sea King specter over 4,000 meters long. It's my turn now, he muttered to himself. After all, when he broke through to the Admiral level, he still felt his foundation was a bit weak. Otherwise, he wouldn't have struggled so much against a severely wounded Akiji. He sat cross-legged and began to absorb the last and most massive specter energy. Half an hour later, Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. He could clearly feel that the power within him, which had been somewhat weak, was now completely solid and full. Every bit of his power flowed smoothly, with no hint of stagnation. Now, he had truly stepped into the realm of the Admiral level. With the solidification of his power, many techniques that were previously only vaguely understood now came naturally to him. Armament haki effortlessly mastered Ryuo, allowing him to penetrate the enemy's interior and cause damage. Observation haki also became more acute, even allowing him to glimpse brief moments of the future. As for Conqueror's haki, he was still a bit away from mastering Haoshiku. Looks like I still need to practice my aura more. Lin Yi flexed his wrist, feeling the surging power within him. His swordsmanship had also reached the level of a great sword master. However, he looked down at the Raya grade sword blade in his hand, which had accompanied him all this way, and couldn't help but frown. This sword seemed a bit out of place with his current power level. Rumble! Just then, a massive, thunderous sound drew his attention. Lin Yi looked up and couldn't help but smile. In the air, the recently recovered Shiki was battling Roger. No, more accurately, their conqueror's haki was clashing in the purest form. Black haki lightning bolts continuously exploded in the air, tearing it apart and emitting deafening roars. Meanwhile, Redfield stood silently by Lin Ye's side, like the most dedicated bodyguard. Just then, BRRR. BRRR. Lin Ye's transponder snail suddenly rang urgently. Chapter 72, The World Government's Reaction After the Buster Call Incident Ended. Holy Land Merry Geos. At the summit of the Red Line, the sunlight was dazzlingly bright. Roseward Saint lazily rode on the back of a newly acquired pirate slave, holding a whip in his hand, occasionally swinging it, and enjoying the faint moans of pain from his mount. Crack! He casually struck the slave's back with his whip, drawing a line of blood, and let out a pleased hum. Just then, a guard rushed over, knelt on one knee before him, and bowed his head low. Roseward Saint, Jernica, the 3 CP0 agents are dead. Ha! Roseward Saint's movements abruptly stopped, and for the first time, his perpetually murky eyes showed clear shock. What? My shield! He shrieked, his voice as jarring as a cat with its tail stepped on. Aren't they our celestial dragon's strongest shield? How could they die? Who did it? After all, those 3 had been useful tools for him to capture. Strong slaves, and he quite liked them. The guard's voice trembled. They were sent on a mission by the Gorosei and were killed by the pirate demon emperor of 10,000 souls. Lin Yi, damn you, Lin Yi. Damn you, pirate. Roseward Saint's face instantly contorted, and he vented all his fury on the slave beneath him. Crack! 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 The whip cut through the air, striking again and again on the slave's already bloodied back, releasing his cheap and brutal rage. Deep within Mary Geos, in Pangaea Castle. In that room symbolizing the world's highest authority, the atmosphere was so oppressive it felt like water could drip from it. The world's highest authorities, the 5 elders, who normally held sway over countless lives, were now prostrated on the ground, their postures humble to the extreme. Before them, high in the clouds, a blurry figure sat silently on a vacant throne. The scientific defense deity, Satan Saint, spoke with a face full of reverence, not even daring to lift his head, respectfully reporting. Emu, there is now an extremely strange devil fruit on the seas that can enslave the souls of the dead for one's own use. This time, the Buster Call was defeated by the possessor of this fruit's ability, the demon emperor of 10,000 souls, Lin Yi. Satan Saint paused, seeming to organize his words before continuing. According to the latest intelligence, the legendary pirate souls he currently possesses include the Pirate King Gold Roger, the Golden Lion Shiki, the Solitary, Red Patrick Redfield, and the heir of the Ghost Douglas Bullet. At present, there is practically no one on the seas who can match him. Should we gather our forces again and eliminate this unstable factor as soon as possible? On the throne, the figure called Emu seemed uninterested in that long list of legendary names. He, or perhaps she, was only slightly curious about the ability itself. A ethereal voice, indiscernible in gender or age, slowly spoke. Is he a D? Just that one sentence. Satan Saint suddenly paused, then immediately shook his head, firmly replying, current intelligence indicates that he first appeared 10 years ago near the Marine headquarters. His name is a bit strange, just Lin Yi, but he is not of the D clan. Hearing this answer, the figure on the throne fell silent for a moment. I see. With those faint words, the figure stood up, turned, and left, giving no further instructions. Emu. Satan Saint, seeing the departing figure, was about to ask more but was quietly stopped by another of the 5 elders tugging at his robe. The 5 exchanged glances, seeing deep confusion and bewilderment in each other's eyes, but they dared not disobey, slowly rising and bowing as they retreated. Elsewhere, in the flower field, countless butterflies danced among the vibrant flowers. Shrouded in shadow, Emo walked slowly, his steps so light they made no sound. He came to the center of the room and bent down to pick up the enormous straw hat resting there. His fingertips gently traced the hat's rough texture. Lin Yi? The ethereal voice murmured in the room, as if talking to himself, or perhaps to some unseen presence. Unfortunately, it seems you are not him either. If he was not him, then that was manageable. That meant he could not resist his dark domination. What good were all those strong souls he possessed? In time, with just a thought, those so-called legendary figures, those invincible overlords, wouldn't they just become his servants? When that damned Nika appeared again, this Lin Yi fellow might prove to be a useful asset. So, let him gather more strong souls. With that thought, Emus will cross space, directly conveying to the minds of the 5 elders. Do not act against Lin Yi. As long as he does not oppose the world government, you may try to win him over, and you may promise him the status of a celestial dragon. The 5 elders, who had just left the chamber of power and were about to discuss their strategy, heard this command in their minds simultaneously. The 5 old men stopped in their tracks. Their expressions were as if they had seen a ghost. Shock, disbelief, incredulity. "As you command, Emu." Yet they immediately voiced their absolute obedience in unison. When the command faded, the 5 were left speechless for a long time. Emu favors this Lin Yi? To the point of offering him the status of a celestial dragon to win him over? How is this possible? Satan Saint's mind raced, wild thoughts flashing through his head. Could it be that this Lin Yi is Emu's long-lost illegitimate child? The more he thought, the more plausible it seemed. Otherwise, how could he explain this immense favor? Satan Saint cleared his throat and spoke first, breaking the silence. "Since Emu thinks so highly of this Lin Yi, perhaps we should first clear up any misunderstandings with him. After all, we just launched a buster call to take him down. Does anyone have any good suggestions? Let's discuss." Beside him, Topman Watchly Saint, stroking his long beard, pondered and said, "First, notify Sengoku to halt all actions against Lin Yi." Meanwhile, at the Marine headquarters, Marineford. In the tense conference room filled with smoke, Admiral Akainu, his head wrapped in thick bandages, was angrily denouncing Lin Yi's crimes, his face contorted like a wild beast. "That bastard! We must organize another siege. We cannot let him run wild on the seas any longer." Beside him, Admiral Akiji, his abdomen also wrapped in bandages, his face pale as paper, said nothing, but his stern expression showed he agreed with Akainu's proposal. Fleet Admiral Sengoku looked at the empty seats at the conference table, belonging to the fallen vice admirals, feeling a heavy weight on his chest, unable to breathe. He was about to pick up the transponder snail to request further instructions. From the world government. BR. The golden transponder snail on the table rang first. Sengoku answered the call. The transponder snail's face instantly mimicked Satan Saint's stern and cold visage. "Sengoku, cease all actions against Lin Yi." Satan Saint's voice was devoid of emotion. "What?" Akainu shouted in shock, suddenly standing from his chair. Garp, Akiji, and the others also looked at the transponder snail in disbelief and anger. Sengoku suppressed his rage and asked angrily, "Satan Saint, why? You were the ones who requested the buster call to take him down. Now our marine forces have suffered such heavy losses, and you're calling it off? How are we supposed to face the families of the fallen marines?" Sengoku. Satan Saint's voice was frighteningly calm. "Know your place, Marine, obey your orders." Those 6 cold words stabbed into the heart of every Marine officer present. The conference room fell into a deathly silence. On the other end of the transponder snail, Satan Saint's tone seemed to soften slightly. "We will increase this year's Marine budget by 30%. You handle the arrangements." With that, he gave Sengoku no chance to respond. Click. The transponder snail hung up. Sengoku looked wearily at everyone, his face a picture of exhaustion and helplessness. "Damn it!" Akainu, furious, crushed the cigar in his hand, the hot ash burning his palm, but he didn't notice, kicking open the conference room door and storming out. Vice Admiral Tsuru looked at the angry crowd in the conference room and sighed softly. "Everyone, go and tend to your wounds." Calm your subordinates. Silently, everyone stood and left the conference room, their steps heavy. Soon, the large conference room held only Sengoku and Vice Admiral Tsuru. Sengoku rubbed his aching temples and looked at his old friend. "Tsuru." He paused, his voice hoarse. "Let's discuss Lin Yi's new bounty." Chapter 73 Friendly Condolences from the 5 Elders. Buru buru, buru buru. The transponder snail Lin Yi had snatched from CP0 suddenly rang at the most inopportune moment, and its volume was quite loud. He had just finished refining the soul of that Super Sea King, his entire body brimming with solidified power, feeling ecstatic. This sudden noise startled him, nearly causing him to fall off his seat. "Damn it, who is it? So blind," he grumbled, reaching for the transponder snail. He answered without even looking, "Hello, who is this?" From the other end of the transponder snail came a voice laced with the arrogance and authority of one accustomed to high position. as if every word were dusted with gold powder, making one's kidneys ache just hearing it. I am J. Garcia Saturn Saint, one of the Gorosei of the Celestial Dragons, the supreme leader of the world government. You should have heard of us from Roger, Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lin Yi? Lin Yi listened to this long, self-important introduction. He curled his lip and interrupted unceremoniously, "Oh, never heard of you. Goodbye." Thud. His fingers loosened, and the transponder snail instantly reverted to its dull state. He wasn't foolish. He had already turned Impel Down upside down, and now he had knocked down their buster call. These world government fellows coming to him now could only mean they wanted to demand accountability and issue threats, right? Did they think he was a 3-year-old to be easily fooled? Listening to their nonsense would be idiotic. Holy Land Mary Geos, deep within Pangea Castle. The Gorosei, the world's supreme authorities, stared at each other, their expressions akin to having collectively eaten flies, frozen on their faces. This kid. Saint Topman Warcury, the one with the long, thin mustache, couldn't manage a full sentence for a long time. His face had turned green with anger. Forget ordinary people, even the emperors in the New World, upon hearing they were the supreme leaders of the world government, would at least react cautiously and courteously, if not tremble in fear. But this Lin Yi completely disregarded convention. With a single sentence, he hung up the transponder snail directly, not giving them any face whatsoever. The atmosphere in the meeting room instantly plummeted to freezing point. The faces of the other Gorosei also darkened, clearly showing their rising rage. Only Saint Saturn, on his stern face, quickly regained his composure after the initial shock. Lord Emu had personally given instructions, and since Lin Yi now possessed the strength to be arrogant, Lord Emu's orders still needed to be executed properly. He took a deep breath, suppressing the discomfort in his heart. Buru Buru, the transponder snail, was dialed again. Ha? What the heck, calling again? Lin Yi had just casually tossed the transponder snail aside when the thing started ringing Buru Buru again, as if its tail had been stepped on. He frowned, picked it up once more, his tone filled with impatience. I already said, I don't know any Gorosei or Rokurosei. You have the wrong number. Get lost quickly. After speaking, he made a move to hang up again. Wait. On the other end, Saint Saturn's voice this time was not the slow, drawn-out tone. It carried a trace of urgency, and his speaking speed had clearly more than doubled. Lin Yi. We are not here to cause trouble for you. On the contrary, we have good news for you. Lin Yi's hand, suspended in midair, froze. Not here to cause trouble? That statement sounded as if the sun had risen from the west, leaving him somewhat bewildered. Yes. Saint Saturn's voice returned to a coaxing tone, like a cunning old fox luring a little rabbit. Everything before was a misunderstanding. As long as you stop causing trouble for our world government in the future, we can even promise you the status of a celestial dragon, becoming the most top-tier world noble in this world. How about it? Celestial dragon. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow, feeling like his ears might have malfunctioned. What kind of bizarre move was this? Was this a scam call reaching the world of the Pirate King? You guys aren't scammers, are you? Impersonating the Gorosei isn't a good idea, you know, he teased. Saint Saturn on the other end was truly speechless. Who would have the guts to impersonate us? Don't worry, everything I just said stands. Think it over carefully. Lin Yi didn't reply, just turned to look at Redfield, who had been standing beside him. The solitary Red was always very sparing with words. He just let his eyes flash slightly, parted his lips, and uttered a few words. When things are abnormal, there must be a reason. The former part of the offer can be accepted. The latter part, absolutely not. Lin Yi nodded. He knew clearly in his heart that pies don't fall from the sky, and even if one did, it might crush you. As for the celestial dragon status, forget it, I can't handle it. Lin Yi replied lightly, but then shifted his tone, revealing his shrewd merchant nature. However, your previous buster call scared me half to death. My subordinates exerted all their strength just to keep me safe, and they are all still severely injured and unconscious. You want me to reconcile with your world government? Fine. He cleared his throat and made an exorbitant demand: bring 1 supreme grade sword and 10 devil fruits as an apology. Saint Saturn's eye twitched violently when he heard Lin Yi's words. He looked towards the other 4 Gorosei, their gazes meeting in the air, as if conducting a silent exchange. This kid is really taking advantage of the situation. Finally, Saint Saturn spoke again, his tone calm: we can do it. However, we don't have a supreme grade sword. How about a great grade sword? Great grade sword? Forget it, I know many places have those. Lin Yi dismissed it with a disdainful curl of his lip. How about this? I'll tell you the location of a weapon, and you go. Get it for me. Saint Saturn on the other end was slightly stunned. Oh? Alright. It's on an island called Asuka Island. There is a sealed demonic sword named Shikasaiken. Just find it for me. Lin Yi said slowly, already ecstatic inside. He had coveted this Shikasaiken for a long time, but he just didn't know where Asuka Island was located. This was perfect. He could make the world government use their intelligence network to find it for him. How clever he was. Inside Pangaea Castle, St. Ethan Baron V. Inashiro looked at the words demonic sword and his eyes brightened slightly. He unconsciously touched the original onigiri in his hand, a confident curve forming on his lips. A demonic sword? Humph, in front of his original onigiri, which one would dare to act presumptuously? On St. Saturn's end, his tone returned to the coldness of a business negotiation. Fine. As for the devil fruits, we can only give you 5. What? Lin Yi heard this and thought the cut was too harsh. You just cut it in half? No way. At least 9. 6. Saint Saturn remained unmoved. 8. Lin Yi raised his bid. 6. Saint Saturn made the final decision immediately, his tone carrying an undeniable firmness. Lin Yi was just about to agree, but then he realized something was wrong with this haggling routine. Who haggles like that? His tone became displeased, like a husky whose drumstick had been snatched away. Shouldn't you have said 7? Saint Saturn's voice finally carried a trace of impatience. Just 6. TCH. Lin Yi curled his lip. Forget it, it was free anyway, so he shouldn't refuse what he could get. Fine, I'll take a small loss, 6 it is. But I don't want any trash Zoan-type devil fruits. Don't try to fool me, or don't blame me for turning hostile. He issued a preemptive warning. Alright, I get it. Saint Saturn's tone carried a hint of exhaustion. You must also promise us that you will no longer oppose the world government. As long as you don't bother me, I won't bother to pay attention to you guys. Lin Yi replied with extreme casualness. Saint Saturn took a deep breath and added, also, you must head to the New World as soon as possible and not stay in the first half of the Grand Line for too long. Right now, you are in the eye of the storm. Okay, I get it. That's it, bye-bye. Lin Yi couldn't be bothered to listen to his nagging. He responded perfunctorily a few times and eagerly hung up the transponder snail. The transponder snail returned to its dull state. Lin Yi finally couldn't hold back the massive smile spreading across his face. Ha ha ha. He looked at Wright Redfield, clapped his hands, and laughed heartily. Those idiots from the world government. Not only are they not looking for trouble with me, but they're even sending me gifts. Wright Redfield maintained his unruffled expression. Although he was also puzzled by the world government's bizarre actions, he habitually reminded him, be careful. This might be their sugar-coated bullets. Lin Yi grinned upon hearing this, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. Sugar-coated bullets? He waved his hand grandly, his expression arrogant and smug. Even if they are, we can eat the sugar coating first, and as for the bullets, we can just shoot them right back at them. After saying that, he lightly tapped the transponder snail, his thoughts drifting far away. Chapter 74, Raise the Sails. Set sail. Let's go. Get Roger and the others. Let's go see how our ship is doing. Lin Yi called out to Patrick Redfield beside him, and the two walked side by side toward the depths of the mountain forest. Before they even got close, a series of dull, thunderous booms caused by clashing conquerors' hockey, mixed with Golden Lion's signature shouting, drifted over. "Roger! You damn bastard, let go of me. That last one didn't count. I just recovered, and my legs just grew back, so I didn't have my footing. Let me get up first, and we'll go again." Lin Yi and Patrick Redfield glanced at each other, both seeing a hint of helpless amusement in the other's eyes. This Shiki really was a guy who would rather die than lose face. Having just recovered from his injuries, he couldn't wait to challenge their number one ace. The result was obvious. The two rounded a large boulder, and the sight before them almost made Lin Yi burst out laughing. The Pirate King Gold Roger was acting like a bully picking on a younger student, sitting squarely on Golden Lion Shiki's back. He even had one hand pressed firmly against Shiki's newly grown, golden head, preventing him from getting up. "Shiki, your brain just recovered too, maybe it hasn't finished growing back yet?" Roger grinned, revealing a row of bright white teeth as he laughed brilliantly. "You actually have the nerve to say such a stupid excuse." As he spoke, he slapped the back of Shiki's head twice, "Papa," like he was patting a watermelon. "Ha ha ha. Shiki, it looks like you've recovered well. You're quite energetic." Lin Yi and Patrick Redfield walked over at this moment, laughing heartily. "Ugh." Pinned beneath him, Shiki let out a muffled groan of frustration. Only then did Roger stand up and give him a hand. Shiki scrambled to his feet awkwardly, pretentiously brushing off non-existent dust from his clothes. He then resumed his insufferably arrogant demeanor, and his signature laughter rang out again. "Yeah ha ha ha. Lin Yi, are you ready? Then next, we should go get our revenge on the Marine and the world government," Shiki said, full of fighting spirit, the flames of vengeance flickering in his eyes. Lin Yi, however, shook his head. "No." "What?" Shiki's laughter stopped abruptly, his face practically screaming, "Are you kidding me? The Gorosei of the world government just contacted me." Lin Yi shoved his hands into his pockets and dropped a bombshell in a flat tone. "They're willing to compensate us and have reached a settlement. So for now, they won't come looking for trouble with us anymore. As for us, until we truly have the power to completely overthrow them, there's no need to go looking for trouble with them." Hearing this, Roger's face showed a look of interest. "Oh? The Gorosei, the supreme leaders of the world government? They're actually willing to settle with us? How interesting. What? Are those guys that cowardly?" Shiki, on the other hand, looked full of dissatisfaction and disappointment. He was still thinking about letting those bastards in the Marine and the world government witness the full power of the flying pirate again. He wanted them to feel the despair of warships falling from the sky. Lin Yi patted his shoulder and comforted him. "Ha, don't worry, Shiki. You'll have your time to shine. For now, we should continue to build our strength before we crush those disgusting guys from the world government." With that, he gave a grand wave of his hand. "Come on, let's go see our new ship first." At the mention of a new ship, the eyes of Roger, Shiki, Bullet, Patrick Redfield, and the Elite Five all lit up. The group followed Lin Yi toward Carl's workshop in a grand procession. They passed through the familiar cave filled with various tools and blueprints. When the open, hidden bay where the shipyard was located appeared before them once again, Lin Yi's footsteps suddenly halted. At that moment, his pupils constricted violently. Mist. The morning mist in the bay was dissipating. A pitch-black, gargantuan beast crouched in the morning light, its ferocious and majestic silhouette slowly emerging from behind the milky white veil. That wasn't just a ship. It was a mobile fortress on the sea. A deep-sea leviathan lying in wait in the harbor, about to wake up. The entire body was dark black, and the ship's lines were smooth yet full of power, as if every inch of the planks contained a terrifying strength capable of tearing the sea apart. When the sunlight hit it, instead of reflecting, it seemed to be completely swallowed by that deep blackness. On the broad deck, rows of dark cannon muzzles stared coldly at the peaceful sea like the eyes of silent, man-eating beasts, emitting a heart-chilling coldness. And the most eye-catching part was the high-rising prow. It was a massive, ferocious beast head evolved from the totem of the 10,000 Souls banner. The beast head looked like a dragon but wasn't a dragon, like a ghost but wasn't a ghost. It had 2 horns on its head and exposed fangs. In its hollow eye sockets, countless black soul shadows seemed to be circling and roaring. Just looking at it made one feel as if their soul was being pulled in by that cold, overbearing aura. Silence. A deathly silence. Not just Lin Yi, but Roger, Shiki, and the others behind him were all as if under a paralysis spell, each one wide-eyed and speechless. Lin Yi's mouth hung open, and a raspy sound came from his throat, but he couldn't utter a single word. Shock. An unprecedented shock. This is the ultimate vessel that can carry a group of legendary powerhouses like them. Ahem. A light cough broke the silence. Carl had stood beside them at some point. On his eternally sour face, a rare, unconcealable trace of fanaticism and pride appeared, like an artist seeing the birth of their most perfect masterpiece. Well, are you satisfied? He asked in a feigned flat tone, but the slight upward curve of his lips betrayed the pride in his heart. Satisfied. I'm so damn satisfied. Lin Yi finally found his voice. He lunged forward and gave Carl a fierce hug. Master Carl, you are my god. Humph. Carl immediately perked up, puffing out his chest with his chin held high. His expression was the spitting image of a smug person who had finally gotten their way. Lin Yi didn't bother with him anymore. He dashed to the side of the ship, pushed off hard with both legs, and leaped directly onto the vessel, landing steadily. His soul stepped onto the solid deck, which had a hint of warmth to it. That feeling was more grounding than ever before. Jia ha 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 ha. Not bad. Now this is more like it. Golden Lion's boisterous, heroic laughter exploded on the deck as he was the first to follow and jump up. Roger and the others also boarded the ship, their faces all beaming with heartfelt joy. Especially Roger, he had followed Lin Yi for 10 whole years, and now he finally had a true home, a place where they could rest and recover. How could he not be excited? Give it a name, Carl reminded them from the shore. As soon as he finished speaking, Shiki instantly jumped out and blurted out, "Let's call it the Golden Lion." TCH. Roger countered with a look of disdain. Call it the Heaven Shatterer. Make our goal clear, crush the celestial dragons. Patrick Redfield also joined in the fun for once, coldly spitting out a few words, how about the Black Soul? Seeing these guys about to argue over the ship's name, luckily Bullet remained his cool self and didn't participate. Lin Yi quickly stepped in to stop them. You all give it a rest. He cleared his throat and said in an unquestionable tone, we'll just call it the Myriad Soul ship. No need for anything fancy. I'm the captain, listen to me. After saying that, a rolled-up flag emitting an ominous aura appeared out of thin air in his hand. He walked to the mainmast, attached the flag, and then gave it a hard pull. Whoosh! A pirate flag with a very underworld style slowly rose against the morning sun. It was a solid black flag. In the center of the flag was a grinning, arrogant-looking skull. Behind the skull was a Q version of the 10,000 Souls banner that was puffing out wisps of black gas. The Myriad Soul ship. Set sail. Lin Yi stood at the bow, spreading his arms and letting out a roar. The sound echoed in the bay for a long time. Yes. Captain. An old and steady voice seemed to come from every corner of the ship, responding to his command. It was Guler, the ship's spirit, who had completely integrated into the Myriad Soul ship. Creak, screech. A massive, tooth-aching sound of mechanical friction rang out. The giant latches holding the ship in place slowly released. The giant vessel, like a black mountain range, began to slide slowly yet with an unstoppable, majestic force toward the deep blue sea. Strangely, such a massive object didn't kick up the expected giant waves when it slid into the water. It simply kissed the surface of the sea extremely steadily and elegantly, as if it were born to belong there. Ha ha ha. We're sailing. Old man Carl, thank you. Lin Yi was so excited he jumped up and down at the bow like a child who had gotten a favorite toy, waving his arms vigorously at Carl on the shore. Carl also smiled and waved back at the kid. He knew that his life's greatest work was about to be taken by this lawless kid to make a name for itself in the world. A wave of unprecedented gratification and pride welled up in his heart. Lin Yi stood at the prow, high-spirited, feeling like he was the coolest guy on this sea. Just then, a newscoo flapped its wings and flew through the air. "Hey! Over here!" Patrick Redfield called out to it, skillfully pulling out some berries to buy the latest newspaper and a brand new bounty poster. Chapter 75, 10,000 Souls Pirates, famous throughout the world. The newspaper is here. Redfield's voice wasn't loud, but it was like a stone thrown into a calm pond, instantly drawing everyone's attention. In his hand was the newspaper he had just bought from a news coup and a brand new bounty poster. The members of the Elite Five were quick, snatching and unfolding the newspaper. The bold, black headline that practically jumped off the page hit everyone's eyes hard. 10,000 Souls Pirates defeat Marine Buster Call. Below the headline was a massive photo taking up half the page. In the photo, Lin Yi, Roger, Redfield, faces either arrogant or indifferent, formed a sharp contrast with the solemn and angry expressions of Garp, Zephyr, and others on the other side. The text in the newspaper was even more inflammatory. Shocking! Pirate King Roger reappears on the sea. Has the great secret treasure already been obtained by the 10,000 Souls Pirates? Golden Lion Shiki, the solitary Red Redfield, heir of the Demon Bullet, why are so many legendary powerhouses simultaneously serving under the 10,000 Souls Pirates? The Marines' new top combat forces Akiji and Akainu both defeated. Even the joint efforts of Marine hero Garp and former Admiral Black Arm Zephyr were powerless. Can the member nations continue to trust the Marines' protection? Buster Call defeated for the first time. Marineford loses several Marine vice admirals and thousands of elites. Where is the face of justice? With the overwhelming strength shown by the 10,000 Souls Pirates, after Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lin Yi enters the New World, he may stand alongside the three Emperors Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom as a new Emperor of the Sea. The four Emperors structure of the New World is about to emerge. Reports one after another, each more exaggerated and daring than the last. Lin Yi looked at the content, his mouth twitching, unable to help but comment, "Good grief! That Birdman Morgans really dares to write anything. He's rubbing the Marine's face in the dirt over and over." He paused, then added a bit helplessly, "And this guy is too good at drawing aggro for me. I haven't even entered the New World to grab territory yet, and he's already booked a four Emperor's seat for me?" Although he said that. However, the corners of Lin Yi's mouth, which couldn't stop rising, had long since given away the bit of pride in his heart. "Captain, there's also this." Redfield pulled out the bounty poster from underneath and spread it out in front of Lin Yi. On the photo was a defiant smile Lin Yi had shown during the battle. The string of numbers below made one's head spin. Demon Emperor of 10,000 Souls Lin Yi, captain of the 10,000 Souls Pirates bounty, for 50,000,000 berries. DAD or alive, holy crap. Lin Yi's eyes almost popped out, and he nearly lost his breath. I jumped straight to 4 billion berries? Jihaha, not bad. Captain Lin Yi. Shiki leaned over to take a look and nodded with satisfaction, then scratched his golden head in confusion. By the way, why aren't there bounty posters for us? This question was also a doubt in the hearts of the other legendary powerhouses. Roger leaned against the ship's railing, arms crossed, and laughed upon hearing this. We are all products of Lin Yi's devil fruit ability. Essentially, we are already dead. The Marines and the world government aren't stupid. He held up a finger and explained slowly, if Lin Yi is captured or killed, do you think we can still exist? Catching one Lin Yi is equivalent to catching all of US in one go. If we had bounties too, wouldn't they add up to tens of billions? The Marines aren't so foolish as to issue bounties for a bunch of ghosts they can't catch. After hearing this, Lin Yi realized and nodded, no wonder my bounty is so ridiculously high. Based on my current strength, I'd be worth a bit over 3 billion at most. This 4 billion berries includes the value of you old guys. He rubbed his chin and smirked. Of course, those guys in the world government are currently in a honeymoon phase with us, so my danger level isn't considered the highest, and they didn't push me directly over 5 billion berries. Otherwise, Roger, you alone would be worth more than 5 billion. Meanwhile, at Marine Headquarters, Marineford. In the Fleet Admiral's office. Bang! Sengoku slammed his fist onto the desk, making the documents and transponder snail jump. He pointed at the comments in the newspaper belittling the Marines, veins bulging on his forehead in anger, and let out a thunderous roar at the air. Morgans! I'm going to shove your beak into a battleship's cannon. You despicable bastard! Outside the office, the Marine soldiers on guard trembled, shrinking their heads as if they wanted to squeeze themselves into the cracks in the wall. All over the world, countless people looked at the newspapers, falling into unprecedented panic and uproar. The Marines' strongest symbol of force, the Buster Call, was defeated? 2 newly appointed Marine admirals were also directly beaten down? Even the legendary pirate King Roger was resurrected in another form and became someone else's subordinate? Fortunately, after learning it was only a soul state and not a true resurrection, everyone breathed a slight sigh of relief. But the Marines' prestige, at this moment, had undoubtedly hit rock bottom. Disappointment and doubt toward the world government spread across the world like a plague. New World, Moby Dick. Pops. Phoenix Marco flew in front of Whitebeard with a newspaper, looking displeased, and pointed at the 4 Emperors report, shouting, "This Morgans is going too far. He actually put you together with that kid Lin Yi, Kaido, and Big Mom as the 4 Emperors. How do they have the right? You are the strongest man in the world." Edward Newgate was heroically gulping down sake. He took the newspaper and looked at those familiar old faces. A flash of surprise and nostalgia instantly crossed his cloudy eyes. Gurararara. He let out his signature hearty laugh, making the deck tremble slightly. Marco, don't underestimate anyone. He put down the giant sake bowl and looked at his sons with a loving gaze, his voice tinged with emotion. Pops might be able to protect you for another decade or so. But the future era will ultimately depend on yourselves. After speaking, his gaze returned to the newspaper, looking at the photos of Roger, Shiki, and Redfield, his eyes full of expectation. This kid Lin Yi is quite something. Roger, Shiki, Redfield, old friends, it's been a long time. Wano country, Onigashima. A giant sake gourd was tossed aside. Kaido, eyes bleary from drink, glanced at the newspaper and bounty poster presented by his subordinate. Warorororo. He let out a drunken burp and a unique laugh. Roger? Shiki? You remnants of the old era, have you popped up again? He blew alcoholic breath toward the bounty poster with Lin Yi's face, his eyes filled with beast-like battle intent. Lin Yi, is it? If you have the guts, come to the New World. I want to see just how much ability you have. Tato Land, Cake Island. Mama, Mama. Charlotte Linlin was contentedly stuffing a huge piece of cake into her mouth, chewing while nonchalantly looking at Lin Yi's 4 billion bounty poster. Her crimson tongue licked the cream from the corner of her mouth, a flash of greed in her eyes. Katakuri. The tall Charlotte Katakuri appeared silently. Mama. Go. Big Mom's voice carried an unquestionable sweetness and majesty. Invite this kid Lin Yi to attend my tea party. Yes, Mama. Katakuri looked at Lin Yi on the bounty poster and withdrew with a serious expression. In an unknown sea area, Shanks looked at the familiar face in the newspaper in shock. Roger. Captain. Chapter 76, A Destination, Jia Island. Lin Yi, where are we going next? Roger plopped down on the deck, a liquor bottle dangling in his hand, and looked up at Lin Yi. Lin Yi crossed his arms, tilted his head slightly, squinted his eyes against the sea breeze, and a smile appeared on his face. Jaya Island. The liquor bottle in Roger's hand paused. Jaya Island? He raised an eyebrow. Are you planning to go to Sky Island? He thought for a moment, wondering how Lin Yi's train of thought had veered in that direction. Sky Island doesn't have any strong individuals for you to recruit. Besides some interesting Sky Island shells, there's only gold left. Roger stroked his chin, his eyes instantly brightening. He chuckled, "What? Are you going to get some gold?" Lin Yi first nodded, then shook his head, a movement that left Roger utterly confused. "Gold is just a side matter," he said lightly, then his tone shifted, carrying a hint of mystery. "My goal is a devil fruit." Devil fruit? Roger was genuinely interested now, sitting up straight. "What kind of devil fruit is worth you traveling all this way for?" Lin Yi's lips curved into a smile, and he slowly uttered a few words, "Logiotype rumble rumble fruit." "What?" "The rumble rumble fruit." As soon as the words fell, the deck instantly erupted in an uproar. Roger sprang to his feet, and Shiki's characteristic Jaya ha 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 got stuck in his throat, turning into a half-gasp. Even Redfield's usually unperturbed face showed a rare ripple of emotion. Even Bullet, the guy who was always as steady as an old dog, his eyelids twitched fiercely. They had all just recently clashed with 3 Marine admirals and naturally understood how troublesome Logiotype devil fruits were. The rumble rumble fruit that Lin Yi mentioned was a top-tier Logiotype that was by no means inferior to theirs. How do you know about the rumble rumble fruit?" Shiki stammered in his haste, his mustache trembling. "Have you been to Sky Island?" Lin Yi shook his head, the triumphant smile on his face growing wider. "Although I haven't been there myself, Luffy went for me." Immediately, Lin Yi pondered, wondering if Enero had already eaten this devil fruit by now. If he had, it would save a lot of trouble. If he hadn't, it didn't matter, as the rumble rumble fruit had long disappeared for many years in the original plot, only reappearing when Enero did. So, this fruit must still be on Sky Island, it couldn't escape. "Old Goo!" Lin Yi commanded, his voice filled with unquestionable decisiveness. "To Jaya Island." "Understood, Captain." From deep within the spacious cabin of the Myriad Soul ship, an old and steady voice responded. It was the ship spirit. Gular. Ever since Gular integrated into the Myriad Soul ship, all the navigation experiences and route maps of the navigator's souls he had refined were imprinted deep within its mind. The route to Jaya Island was no exception. This ghostly behemoth now seemed to have activated auto-navigation, its hull vibrating slightly as it cut through the waves towards its destination. 2 days later. On a cloudless sea, the Myriad Soul ship sailed steadily. Suddenly, on the horizon ahead, a ship flying a tattered pirate flag vaguely appeared. "Captain! Come look, that pirate ship ahead is so imposing." On that ship, a sharp-eyed pirate pointed at the Myriad Soul ship and cried out, his voice filled with the surprise of a country bumpkin entering the city. "What pirate ship?" A burly man with a beard like steel needles grumbled as he emerged from the cabin. He snatched the telescope from his crewmate's hand and put it to his eye. Through the telescope, the inky black Myriad Soul ship gleamed with a cold luster in the sunlight, and the ferocious beast-head totem on its bow was simply awe-inspiring. "Hiss," the bearded captain gasped. "Damn it, that was a pirate ship." Looking at the dilapidated vessel under his own but, he suddenly felt it wasn't appealing at all. "Hey! Does anyone recognize what pirate crew that is?" He lowered the telescope and asked his subordinates. The pirates looked at each other, shaking their heads like rattles. "Don't know, Captain. Never seen them." The bearded captain heard this and immediately brightened, waving his large hand with a certain air of authority. Since no one recognizes them, they must be small, unknown pirates. He grinned sinisterly, a hint of greed flashing in his eyes. "Bring the ship closer." A shifty-eyed pirate next to him cautiously suggested, "Captain, shouldn't we fire first? Going straight for a boarding battle, isn't that a bit too risky?" Bang! The bearded captain directly gave that pirate a hard smack on the head. "Are you stupid? I want this ship. If we blow it up, are you going to fix it for me?" The pirate clutched his head in pain, nodding and bowing repeatedly, "Yes, yes, Captain. I understand, I understand." On the Myriad Soul ship. "Boss." Number 1 approached Lin Yi, pointing ahead. "There's a pirate ship in front, and it looks like it's coming straight for us." Lin Yi was leaning against the ship's rail, lazily basking in the sun. Hearing this, he raised an eyebrow. Oh? A pirate ship? He leisurely walked to the bow and took a casual glance. He saw a group of guys on the dilapidated pirate ship ahead, like monkeys, excitedly waving various weapons and yelling as they charged towards them. Lin Ye's mouth twitched, looking speechless. What are these things? They actually want to provoke us? Roger and Shiki had already sensed them, but they didn't even bother to look, continuing with what they were doing, completely disregarding these small fries. Before long, the pirate ship swayed closer. Listen up, people on board. A pirate stood at the bow, shouting hoarsely, his voice slightly off-key due to excitement. Our captain is the bearded Urulu, with a bounty of 35 million berries. Our captain has taken a liking to your ship. Be sensible and hand over your ship to us. Otherwise my ass. Lin Yi rolled his eyes. In this day and age, someone with a 35 million berries bounty dared to shout at him? Where did they get the courage? TCH, a bunch of small-time nobodies. Before he finished speaking, the blade in his hand was already unsheathed, a cold light flashing. Swish! An incredibly sharp sword energy, with a whistling sound that tore through the air, instantly crossed the sea and precisely struck the hull of the pirate ship. Crack! A spine-chilling tearing sound rang out. The unfortunate pirate ship was actually sliced into two down the middle by a smooth cut. The cross-section was as neat as tofu cut by a knife. The pirates on board were instantly terrified. The ship split. What happened? Help! Pirates kept losing their footing and falling into the water, thrashing about and crying out in despair. In the chaos, finally, a pirate who usually liked to collect bounty posters, with sharp eyes, spotted the all-too-familiar figure at the bow of the Myriad Soul ship. That's Lin Yi. He widened his eyes, pointing at Lin Yi, his voice trembling uncontrollably. What? Is that the demon emperor of 10,000 souls, Lin Yi, who directly defeated the Marine Buster Call and has a bounty of 4.05 billion berries? Another pirate next to him screamed out Lin Yi's full title and bounty in terror. Bearded Urulu was completely stunned. He stared blankly at his ship, sliced in half by a single sword, then at the cold figure on the Myriad Soul ship, and the terrifying number he had just heard. It's over. However, Lin Yi paid no mind to these panic-stricken drowning men. He didn't even bother to spare them another glance. The Myriad Soul ship continued to sail straight towards Jaya Island, as if everything that had just happened was merely a gentle breeze across the sea. Chapter 77, landing on Sky Island. After a small interlude, the Myriad Soul ship was nearing Jaya Island. For over 400 years, the Golden City had hardly been discovered, to the point that many believed it was just a legend. To reach Sky Island, one had to ride the knock upstream, which itself was an extremely rare phenomenon. Furthermore, sailing a ship into the knock upstream carried a very high chance of the ship being destroyed and all lives lost. Today, Lin Yi and the others were fortunate enough to witness a cylindrical knock upstream, hundreds of meters thick, appearing before their eyes. It surged upwards from the bottom of the whirlpool, shooting straight into the sky, its current rising vertically to the heavens. Oh my, that old fellow, Roger, stared intently at the 100-meter thick knock upstream, clicking his tongue. We're too late, the knock upstream has already shot up. What should we do now? His gaze was clearly directed at Shiki. Jia ha ha ha. Golden Lion Shiki indeed took the bait. As soon as his characteristic wild laughter erupted, the entire deck shook 3 times. With his hands on his hips, his neck stiff as a bull's, and nostrils flared upwards, he arrogantly declared, "With me here, do we still need to ride this current? Roger, have you gone senile? Is your brain fried? Ha ha ha." Lin Yi quickly joined in the teasing. "Shiki, we're counting on you." Upon hearing my words, Shiki's tail practically wagged to the sky. He was utterly smug. Without further ado, he spread his hands, like 2 invisible giant hands, and instantly lifted our Myriad Soul ship. Buzz, with a low hum, the massive Myriad Soul ship suddenly lifted off the sea surface. Like a rocket, it shot towards Sky Island, following the soaring knock upstream. The wind howled and whistled in their ears. In just a few tens of seconds, the myriad soul ship had ascended to an altitude of 10,000 meters. The sea below had transformed into a vast blue map, and clouds rolled by their side, seemingly within reach. This sensation of being suspended 9 heavens high, looking down upon the mortal world, was truly a first for Lin Yi in his 2 lifetimes. When he was a corporate drone before, let alone flying, the subway was packed like a sardine can. Being able to find a standing spot was a blessing. This is freedom. Lin Yi couldn't help but spread his arms, facing the strong winds, and shouted out loud, feeling incredibly refreshed. Before he could lament further, the knock-up stream suddenly seemed to lose power, plummeting vertically. But the myriad soul ship remained unaffected. That old fellow Shiki was incredibly stable, gently descending like a black feather onto the blue and white sea, which resembled piled-up cotton candy. White sea. Heaven's Gate. Ha! This place truly lives up to its name, Heaven's Gate. It's like a fairyland, a vast expanse of white, clouds everywhere, and the ship floats on the clouds. This feeling is truly indescribable. Lin Yi was about to properly explore this wondrous scene, contemplating finding a good spot to catch some Sky Island fish to taste, when he suddenly heard the rustling of grass and trees. Rustle, then, a group of people emerged from the jungle. Each of these people had a pair of small wings on their backs, dark skin, and their attire, well, it was quite primitive. Hey, what's going on here? Lin Yi scratched his head, a bit confused. These natives with small wings on their backs were the indigenous Scythian people. They held strangely shaped weapons in their hands, their eyes vigilantly fixed on Lin Yi and the others, looking as if they were facing a formidable enemy. One Scythian warrior, who appeared to be a leader, looked quite burly. He cautiously took 2 steps forward, his gaze sweeping over Lin Yi, Shiki, Redfield, and the others, finally settling on Roger. In that man's eyes, there was a hint of confusion, a hint of probing, and a hint of disbelief. Roger. When he spoke, Lin Yi almost choked on his own saliva. Damn. That old fellow Roger always runs into acquaintances wherever he goes. Roger was also stunned for a moment. He sized up the Scythian in front of him, and a look of reminiscence actually appeared on his ghostly face. Kalman? Roger slowly uttered the name, his voice tinged with emotion and melancholy. Long time no see. Kalman? That name sounds familiar. Thinking carefully, isn't he a descendant of the great Scythian warrior Kalgara from 400 years ago? After a warm embrace, Kalman's dark face was filled with confusion and excitement. He looked at Roger, then at the group behind him, and couldn't help but ask, Captain Roger, did you find the great treasure? Also, what's your current state? And who are they? Roger grinned, revealing his characteristic big white teeth, and said in a relaxed tone, Kalman, I'm already dead. Kalman and his companion's eyes instantly widened, clearly startled by Roger's current semi-transparent state and his words. What? You? Roger then casually recounted, in simple terms, what happened after he left Sky Island, reaching the final island, turning himself in, his execution, and then becoming a soul. The current me appeared under the effect of our captain's devil fruit ability, Kalman listened dumbfounded, only recovering after a long while. He looked at Roger and sighed regretfully, Captain Roger, I can't believe you chose to surrender. Roger waved his hand indifferently. Hey, what's there to regret? The current me has been reborn, and now I'm free from the torment of illness, my body feels much lighter. With that, he pushed Lin Yi forward, smiling broadly as he introduced, this is my current captain, Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled and greeted Kalman and the Scythian group, hello everyone. I am the captain of the 10,000 Souls Pirates, my name is Lin Yi. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Hello. Kalman and the Scythian people all stammered a bit, especially when they looked at Roger, their eyes practically screaming, you actually became someone else's subordinate, in utter shock. However, Kalman, being the leader, quickly recovered. He looked at Roger, then at Lin Yi, and suddenly clapped his hands, a hearty smile appearing on his face. Since we've had such a rare reunion, let's have a feast. Great. Let's feast. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. This was the best way to build camaraderie in the pirate world. And so, everyone enthusiastically began preparations. The Scythian people were very efficient. Before long, wine, meat, and some local specialties from Sky Island filled the makeshift tables. Everyone raised their glasses and drank heartily, and the atmosphere instantly became lively. A young Scythian, a little tipsy, looked at Lin Yi with admiration. "Captain Lin Yi. To be able to bring even Roger under your command, you're truly amazing. And your companions, they all look so strong." He pointed to Shiki, who was arm wrestling with Roger not far away, then to Bullet and Redfield, his eyes sparkling. Lin Yi smiled triumphantly, patting his chest, looking utterly pleased with himself. "Ha ha ha, of course. These companions were all attracted by my overwhelming charisma, like this golden lion Shiki." I deliberately raised my voice, pointing at Shiki not far away, and began to talk nonsense vividly. "He, used to be Roger's sworn enemy, almost burying Roger's pirate crew in the sea. How formidable. Yet, didn't he still come scurrying over, begging to join my pirate crew, after hearing my name? Oh, so amazing." Several surrounding Scythians listened with great interest, exclaiming in surprise. Shiki, who was arm wrestling with Roger not far away, suddenly heard my passionate speech, and veins instantly bulged on his golden face. "Lin Yi!" He roared, abruptly stood up, and was about to rush over to teach this disparaging fellow a lesson. However, as soon as he took a step, Roger, who was beside him, quickly grabbed him. That old rascal then grinned mischievously and handed him a wine bottle. "Shiki! Come on, let's drink. We won't go home until we're drunk tonight." Shiki grumbled in anger, but Roger held him tight, so he couldn't break free. He could only follow Roger, chugging wine and eating meat. The atmosphere grew increasingly harmonious amidst songs, wine, and food. Kalman, this fellow, suddenly asked halfway through the feast, "Captain Lin Yi, do you have a purpose for coming to Sky Island this time?" Lin Yi didn't hide anything. "We're looking for someone named Eneru." Kalman frowned, trying hard to recall the name, but after thinking for a long time, he couldn't remember it. He looked at the other Scythians in confusion and asked, "Do any of you know this person?" Everyone shook their heads, indicating they hadn't heard of him. Lin Yi realized that Eneru probably hadn't eaten the rumble fruit yet, so he quickly added, "He should be living in Burka right now. By the way, his most distinguishing feature is, he has no wings." "No wings? Someone living on Sky Island without wings?" The Scythians were all astonished, their eyes filled with disbelief. "Is he a person from the Blue Sea then? Who cares where he's from?" Kalman waved his hand, laughing heartily. "However, that feature certainly makes him easier to find. Don't worry, Captain Lin Yi, leave it to us." "Ah, then thank you very much." Lin Yi raised his glass, toasting Kalman and all the Scythians. Chapter 78, Sky Island Clam, Impact. The very next morning, just as dawn was breaking, Kalman and his group of Scythians bustled back to rally their people to go after that fellow named Eneru. Lin Yi also dispatched the Elite Five to assist in the search, mainly to have the five of them check if there was a rumble fruit near where Eneru lived. As for himself, he hummed a little tune and sauntered over to the legendary giant golden pillar. Last night during the banquet, when Kalman and the others were flushed and slurring their words, Lin Yi intentionally or unintentionally mentioned this great treasure, saying he quite liked it. As a result, Kalman waved his big hand and told him to just take it without a second thought. In their words, this thing had been stuck there for hundreds of years, serving no purpose other than as a landmark. What a waste! Since that was the case, Lin Yi gladly accepted it without ceremony. He. What a great treasure! Lin Yi rubbed his hands, craned his neck, and stared at the supergiant golden pillar before him, nearly drooling. It had a diameter of 10 meters and a height of a full 60 meters, entirely golden, shimmering with a dazzling luster under the morning sun. This thing weighed approximately 90,000 tons. Standing beneath it, Lin Yi was like a tiny ant. Oh my goodness! Lin Yi swallowed his saliva and complained frantically in his heart, "What concept is 90,000 tons? Back in my previous life, the total official gold reserves of the entire world were only 36,000 tons. This single pillar directly equals 2 or 3 times their reserves. This, damn it, was true wealth that could rival a nation. However, a problem arose. Such a massive pillar would be difficult to fit onto the Myriad Soul ship. He couldn't possibly ask Shiki to carry it around in the sky every day, could he? That would be too conspicuous. Just as Lin Yi was worrying, a flash of inspiration suddenly struck him. Right. He slapped his thigh. Didn't this fellow Vast Waves just awaken a new skill? That extra-dimensional great mouth that can devour objects. Thinking of this, a wicked grin instantly spread across Lin Yi's face. He. Vast Waves, my good son. With a thought, a deep blue shadow surged out of the 10,000 souls banner, transforming into that massive yet incredibly affectionate Sea King. Chirp chirp chirp. As soon as Vast Waves appeared, it gently rubbed its huge head against Lin Yi's cheek, letting out cheerful cries. Good boy, good boy. Lin Yi stroked its slippery skin, then pointed at the sky-supporting giant pillar, coaxing it with a loving expression. Vast Waves, look, I found you a toothpick. From now on, when you eat Sea Kings, you can use this to pick your teeth. Come on, put it in your mouth. The golden pillar, 10 meters in diameter and 60 meters high, indeed looked like a small toothpick compared to Vast Waves' body, which was as huge as an island. Vast Waves obediently opened its giant mouth, which seemed capable of swallowing heaven and earth, and an invisible suction force instantly erupted. Whoosh! The 90,000-ton golden pillar, along with the surrounding cloud soil, was sucked into its mouth with ease and vanished without a trace. Lin Yi looked at the scene and smiled contentedly. Ha 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 ha. Now I don't have to worry about funds anymore. In the future, if I fancy any devil fruit, I can just melt down the gold and exchange it on the black market. Perfect. After completing the task, Vast Waves affectionately rubbed against Lin Yi again before finally transforming into a shadow with satisfaction and returning to the 10,000 souls banner to rest. Contented, Lin Yi returned to the Myriad Soul ship. He moved a lounge chair, opened a parasol, and lay down comfortably on the deck, enjoying the gentle sunshine unique to the Sky Island. On the other side, that fellow Bullet had developed a strong interest in the various clams on the Sky Island. He was like a curious baby, gathering a large pile of them from the Scipions and playing with each one in his hands. Wind clam, sound clam, /clam. He didn't just play with them, he suddenly got the idea to amplify them using his Momo fruit ability. Lin Yi was originally squinting, watching leisurely. He saw a wind clam and Bullet's hand magnify 10 times. With a gentle press, what blew out was no longer a gentle breeze, but a gale strong enough to blow an adult away, instantly becoming a gale clam. The sound clam was no longer a recording device but a super loudspeaker. The noise was simply deafening, turning it into a noise clam. The power of the /clam's release also increased by dozens of times, easily leaving a deep scratch on the white sea, turning it into a giant /clam. Lin Yi watched with great interest. Until Bullet picked up the small, dangerous-looking impact clam. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched violently. Holy crap! He was so startled that he jumped straight up from the lounge chair, flashed, and instantly appeared in front of Bullet. What a joke! The inherent power of the impact clam was already 10 times that of the impact clam. This thing in the original story was a weapon capable of knocking Luffy, who had a rubber heart, into a coma. And Bullet, that brute, actually wanted to amplify its power tenfold? How immense would that power become? With one blast, let alone the deck, he was afraid the entire Myriad Soul ship would be flipped upside down. What are you doing? Bullet looked at Lin Yi, who had suddenly appeared before him, somewhat confused. Get back! Lin Yi pointed toward the distant sky, his face serious. If you're going to test this thing, move far away from the ship. Bullet frowned, lowered his head, and looked at the small object in his hand. Just such a small shell, how powerful could it be? Was it really necessary? However, seeing how tense Lin Yi looked, although he didn't think much of it internally, he still obediently took the impact clam and flew to a position several hundred meters away from the Myriad Soul ship in midair. TCH, making a fuss over nothing, Bullet pouted dismissively, casually pressed the switch on the impact clam, and simultaneously, with a thought, added a 50-fold amplification. The impact clam instantly grew 50 times larger. The next second. Boom! A sound that was extremely dull yet seemed capable of shattering the soul exploded in the air. An unimaginable and terrifying recoil instantly erupted. Bullet was struck as if hit head-on by an ancient giant beast. Before he could even react, he was blasted hundreds of meters away, tracing a pathetic parabola through the sky. And the clouds directly in front of the impact clam suffered the worst fate. That thick sea of clouds was blasted open with a straight, endless white channel. It was as if the sky had been forcibly pierced with a hole. On the deck. Ha 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 ha. Bullet. Now you know why I told you to test it far away. Lin Yi stood with his hands on his hips, pointing at Bullet, who was still tumbling in the air in the distance, laughing so hard he nearly cried. Bullet, who managed to stabilize himself, looked a bit sullen. Being mocked by Lin Yi made him quite unhappy. But when his gaze fell upon the white channel piercing the sea of clouds, all his unhappiness instantly turned into shock. He looked down at the impact clam still vibrating slightly in his hand, and for the first time, a look of interest appeared in his eyes. Interesting. On the deck, Redfield and Shiki also watched this heaven and earth-shattering scene, too astonished to speak. They never expected that such an insignificant little shell could unleash such terrifying power in Bullet's hands. Only Roger, like Lin Yi, was someone who understood. He stroked his chin, his eyes flashing with sharp light as he analyzed, the power of the impact clam itself wasn't much against people of our level. But under the effect of Bullet's Momo fruit, the power increased geometrically. He paused. That last blast was already infinitely close to an attack from an ordinary admiral. However, the recoil is a bit too strong, it's still somewhat unsuitable for actual combat. Chapter 79 Rumble Rumble Fruit acquired after using the Momo fruit to multiply the impact clam. Although the power increased significantly, it still seems a bit lackluster in the hands of the legendary powerhouses before me, and the recoil is so strong. Lin Yi tapped his finger on the ship's railing, a thoughtful expression on his face. However, it's not completely useless though. His eyes rolled as he calculated quickly, doesn't Frankie use that coup de vent quite skillfully? If our Myriad Soul ship could also have a nitrogen boost, it would be incredibly effective when chasing or fleeing. He muttered to himself, nodding with satisfaction after finishing. Just as he was pondering installing a turbocharger on the Myriad Soul ship. On the other side, the Elite Five, guided by the Scipion, had already quietly sneaked deep into Burka. They spread out like a cast fishing net, searching inch by inch with a clear goal, Eneru and that legendary Rumble Rumble. Fruit. Rustle. In the jungle, number one's figure moved like a phantom, weaving silently. Suddenly, his figure paused, his gaze locked onto the front. It was a young man. His back looked upright, but what was most eye-catching was, this guy's back was bare, he didn't have the iconic small wings of a Sky Island resident. Combining this with the general appearance described by Lin Yi. That's him. Number one's eyes hardened, and he immediately gestured to the Scipion who was leading the way. The Scipion saw it, immediately understood, turned around and ran, and soon brought back number two. When number two arrived, he only saw a back. The guy had yellow hair, a face full of unruliness, and his nostrils were pointed to the sky. He might as well have had "I am the best in the world" carved on his face. It really is this guy. Number two moved a bit closer, running through the physical characteristics given by Lin Yi in his mind. That's right, even that arrogant expression matched. Thanks, brother, your mission is complete. Leave the rest to us. Number two said to the Scipion, his tone carrying a touch of ease and a bit of irrefutability. The Scipion nodded, didn't ask any more questions, and left very sensibly. Soon, the other members of the Elite Five arrived one after another, spreading out like shadows and silently setting up hidden sentries around Eneru. Number one continued to stare at Eneru without blinking, fearing that the kid might suddenly disappear. Eneru found. Target confirmed. On the Myriad Soul ship, number two's clear and slightly excited voice rang in Lin Yi's ears. He had been napping under a parasol, but upon hearing this, he sat up with a start, his face instantly beaming with joy. Ha ha ha. Good. Well done. Lin Yi jumped off the lounge chair with a kip up, rubbing his hands together, his eyes shining. Tell the brothers, carpet search. Dig that rumble fruit out for me. If necessary, just snatch it directly, don't be polite to Eneru. Received. Number 2 responded crisply, and then there was only the faint sound of wind on the other end. He immediately joined the search team, weaving through the dense jungle of Burka with the other souls, eyes wide, not even letting a crack in the trees escape his notice. Hard work pays off. Eneru, that guy, was sneaking around, crouching down as he slipped into an apple orchard. He looked left and right, confirming no one was around, then, like a groundhog seeing a cornfield, he nimbly picked several bright red apples, stuffing them into his arms all at once, with one in his mouth, his cheeks bulging like a squirrel. This guy, just to steal apples? Number 1 watched the scene, nearly unable to hold back a laugh. He hadn't taken it too seriously, but just as Eneru reached out to pick the plumpest apples at the top of the tree, holy crap! Number 1's eyes widened instantly, nearly popping out of their sockets. Right on the branch above Eneru's head, a golden, glowing fruit hung all alone. The fruit's skin was covered in spiral-shaped lightning patterns. It was clearly not an ordinary object. This is the rumble fruit. Number 1's voice even had a tremor. Eneru, this kid, really unboxed it right in front of them? How could he care about anything else? With a swish, his soul body turned into an afterimage, instantly flashing to the tree, and he grabbed the golden fruit in his hand. Ah, holy crap! Eneru was scared out of his wits by this sudden ghost, his originally bulging face instantly turning pale, and the apple in his mouth fell to the ground with a thud. He scrambled away, the apples in his arms scattering everywhere, screaming, "Apple ghost!" An apple ghost appeared. I'll never eat apples again. He looked just like he had seen a ghost. Number 1 watched Eneru's retreating figure as he scrambled away, speechless. Well, what is this? He hadn't even eaten the rumble fruit yet, and he'd already developed apple ghost phobia? He shook his head and didn't bother with the terrified Eneru. He headed straight to rendezvous with number 2 and the others, shouting, "Done. Do you have any animals over there? Bring one back." Received. Number 2's voice came quickly. Hearing the commotion over there, it wasn't long before they caught a fluffy cloud fox and returned to the myriad soul ship together. Wow, golden legend. The moment Lin Yi took the rumble fruit, his eyes went straight. That golden fruit simply seemed to radiate holy light in his hands, and he couldn't put it down. Good work, everyone. He smiled and nodded at the Elite 5, then walked towards Roger, Redfield, and the others. Ride, old Roger, take a look. Who wants this thing? Roger glanced at the glittering fruit, then looked at Lin Yi's expression as if he wanted to eat it himself, shook his head, and laughed, "Ha, this thing doesn't suit me." Immediately, his eyes drifted to Redfield, who was silent on the side, and he continued, "Give it to Redfield, he is more compatible with this rumble fruit." Lin Yi heard this, and Roger was right. Redfield, that guy, was born with extremely strong observation hockey. In the original work, his bat fruit, model, vampire, mythical zoan, was rare, but its greatest function was to keep him eternally young and rejuvenate him. But now that he had become a soul, in Lin Yi's 10,000 souls banner, he would neither age nor die, so that fruit ability seemed a bit lackluster for him. But this rumble fruit was different. Eneru's mantra wasn't that with the assistance of the rumble fruit. The range was so wide that he could hear the conversations of everyone on the entire Sky Island, and he could also precisely pinpoint people to attack. What about Redfield? His observation hockey was even more monstrous. He could easily read people's hearts and memories. Lin Yi instantly sketched a picture in his mind. If Redfield ate the rumble fruit, wouldn't his mind reading be heaven-defying? He could directly turn into a super large-range mind-reading domain that could both detect other people's conversations and eavesdrop on their inner thoughts. Once this domain was opened, guarding his own territory, enemies would be exposed as soon as they approached, filling his sense of security to the max. Moreover, Redfield's only current weakness was a lack of area of effect attacks. And the rumble fruit? That was the king of lightning. Perfect. It's simply killing multiple birds with one stone. Lin Yi decided in his heart, then looked at Redfield with a firm gaze, his tone carrying an irrefutable meaning. Then this rumble fruit is handed to you, ride. Redfield still had that calm expression, just nodded slightly, his voice carrying a slightly low hoarseness, but it was exceptionally serious. Thank you, Captain. Lord Ride. As soon as the words fell, the sensible number 2 handed over the fluffy cloud fox in his hand. Redfield understood immediately. He wasn't like that brute bullet, who would just force the fruit down. His slender fingers gently pinched the rumble fruit and brought it to the cloud fox's mouth, looking like, come on, be good, eat the candy. The cloud fox blinked its big eyes curiously, looking at the glittering, slightly sweet-scented big apple in front of it, and took a bite. Mmm. Before it could even chew carefully, an indescribable strange taste instantly rushed to its brain. That taste was like mixing all the dark cuisines together and then letting them expire for several hundred years. It was so disgusting that it had an urge to atavism. All the fur on its body stood on end, and as it opened its mouth, it wanted to spit out that sticky thing. But Redfield had already anticipated this. He stretched out his slender fingers and directly pinched the cloud fox's chin, preventing it from spitting it out. Whoa. The cloud fox instantly felt the malice of the world. Where is this a good-looking fruit? This is clearly poop dressed in a beautiful coat. It's not a dog, why does it have to eat this kind of thing? The cloud fox's watery eyes instantly welled up with tears, looking at Redfield aggrievedly, as if saying, this human is truly a jerk. Ha ha ha. Look at this little guy, this rumble fruit actually made it cry. Lin Yi watched the cloud fox's twisted little face and Redfield's poker-faced devil appearance, instantly laughing until he bent over. He was an experienced person. He felt the same way about the life-worse-than-death experience after eating a devil fruit. The sea breeze blew across the deck, the cloud fox was still silently shedding tears, but its body was faintly emitting golden electric light, while a playful arc curled up at the corner of Lin Yi's mouth. Chapter 80, The End of the Sky Island Trip, Unexpected Gains. Alright, ride. Lin Yi's voice was very soft, drifting in the cold morning breeze of the Sky Island, yet it carried an unquestionable chill. That poor cloud fox had its white fur standing on end, with blue electric arcs occasionally flickering across its body. Its big, watery eyes were filled with the despair of wishing it were dead. Other death row inmates at least get a feast for their final meal, but it, on the other hand, was forced to swallow a mouthful of the worst-tasting thing in this pirate world right before the end. Redfield understood immediately, his slender fingers lifted gently, and an invisible sharp edge flashed by. The cloud fox's struggle stopped instantly, and the last trace of its life force dissipated into the air. Almost the exact moment it stopped breathing, a golden soul, shimmering with countless tiny electric arcs, shot out from its body with a whoosh, trying to escape. Still want to run? Lin Yi chuckled. The phantom image of the 10,000 souls banner had already shrouded the scene. Before the rumble fruit soul spirit had even flown half a meter, it was dragged back by an invisible suction force, obediently hovering in midair. Lin Yi and Roger were already incredibly proficient with this entire process. With a thought from Lin Yi, the golden soul spirit drifted lightly towards Redfield. Come on, ride. Redfield said nothing, simply opening his mouth to let the soul spirit merge into his own soul body. The entire process was smooth and familiar, without the slightest hitch. His observation haki, powerful enough to read people's hearts, and his haushiku, like that of a solitary king, guided and suppressed the spirit, forming unbreakable mental barriers. The faint will within the rumble fruit soul spirit was crushed into pieces before it could even resist, and it was easily refined. Crackle! A string of dazzling lightning burst forth suddenly from Redfield's soul body, jumping and darting around him, emitting crisp crackling sounds. This was the initial manifestation of the rumble fruit's power. Redfield slowly closed his eyes, sensing this brand new power. The violet lightning power not only brought him no discomfort, but instead acted like the most potent activator, stimulating his soul body, which had become somewhat dormant due to years of imprisonment, until every corner was once again filled with explosive vitality. He even felt that he had suddenly become much younger and more active, and the bottleneck in his strength seemed to have been pushed open a little further. Feels good. He opened his eyes, a nearly imperceptible curve tugging at the corner of his mouth. Once he was fully familiar with the power of the rumble fruit, returning to the peak of his strength would be just around the corner. By then, Lin Yi's team would have another powerhouse at the peak of the Emperor level. Moreover, it would be a character with earth-shattering AoE damage, perfectly complementing Roger's extreme single-target attacks. Whoosh! Before the words had even faded, Redfield's figure suddenly transformed into a blinding bolt of lightning, instantly vanishing from where he stood. The next second, he had already appeared high up in the sky. He hovered above the sea of clouds, surrounded by violent thunder, the blue electric light making him look like a god descending to the world. 30 million volts, thunder bats. With a low shout, he swung his hands downwards fiercely. In an instant, the violet lightning in the sky condensed into the shapes of thousands of bats. They flapped their wings made of lightning, emitting hissing shrieks like a blue storm of death, fiercely blasting down towards the calm white sea below. Rumble! The entire white sea instantly exploded into chaos. The surface of the sea seemed as if it had been boiled, countless waterspouts shot into the sky, and lightning raged madly through the sea of clouds, forming a massive minefield. The leisurely skyfish and express shrimp in the sea didn't even have time to react before they were scorched black by the electricity, all flipping their bellies up at once and floating on the surface of the sea, their bodies still flickering with tiny residual electric arcs. Lin Yi stood on the deck of the Myriad Soul ship, watching this spectacular scene, laughing heartily with his hands on his hips. Ha 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 ha. Amazing. It's a good thing this isn't back home, otherwise electrocuting fish like this would be illegal. High in the sky, Redfield transformed back into a bolt of lightning, silently returning to the deck. The satisfied joy on his face was truly impossible to hide this time. Lin Yi watched his elusive teleportation, rubbing his chin and thinking with a mischievous smile, Ride's physical speed was already ridiculous enough, and now adding the lightning speed of the rumble fruit. TSK, from now on, the fastest man in this pirate world might not necessarily be Kizaru anymore. He leaned over to Redfield and suggested with a wink, Ride, listen to me. Next time you see that poser Kizaru, you should ask him to speed his power. Have you ever been kicked by lightning? Then hit him with an ultimate at point-blank range. Ah, just thinking about it is exciting. Upon hearing this, Redfield actually smiled and nodded. Apparently, he also really wanted to test whether the Admiral's glint fruit was faster, or his newly acquired rumble fruit was faster. Besides, satisfying the captain's little guilty pleasure was no harm at all. All right. Brothers, the trip to the Sky Island has concluded perfectly. Lin Yi clapped his hands and shouted spiritedly. Now, it's time to return to the sea and get ready to head to our next destination. Just then, a familiar voice came from not far away. Captain Lin Yi. Everyone turned to look and saw Kalman leading a group of Scipions, walking quickly towards them, evidently drawn by the earth-shattering lightning strike just now. Are you preparing to leave? Kalman asked with some reluctance as he approached. Ah, Kalman, Lin Yi waved with a smile. Yes, we are going back to the Blue Sea. Thank you all for your help this time, ha ha ha. Wait, hold on. Kalman quickly signaled his clansmen to bring over the things they had prepared long ago. Before long, a few Scipions carried over boxes and baskets of various sizes, filled with Sky Island specialties and all kinds of rare fruits. Lin Yi, Roger, who knows when we'll meet again, Kalman said, pushing the items in front of them with a sincere expression. Please accept these Sky Island specialties, it's just a small token of our appreciation. Looking at the variety of Sky Island dials and the fruits and food wafting with exotic fragrances, Lin Yi actually felt a bit embarrassed. After all, he had come here, eaten and taken things, moved away their giant gold pillar, and swiped a top-tier Logia devil fruit, yet they were still so polite. It seems the impression Roger and his group left on them over a decade ago was just too good. These guys were pure, solid brothers. Ha ha ha, we will meet again, Kalman. Then thank you very much. Roger thanked him heartily. Lin Yi didn't decline any further, waving his hand to have the Elite Five carry all these gifts onto the Myriad Soul ship. He silently grumbled to himself, now that the Kid Eneru doesn't have the rumble fruit, that so-called Sky Island Thunder God shouldn't appear again to torment these simple Scipions to death. Probably. After bidding farewell to Kalman and the others, Shiki once again activated the ability of the Flutter Flutter fruit. Jihahaha. Sit tight, everyone. The massive myriad soul ship slowly rose amidst a low hum, turned its bow, and flew towards the blue sea beneath the sea of clouds. However, just as the myriad soul ship passed through the clouds, on the deck, in the fruit area where the Scipion gifts were piled up, an unusual fruit was quietly pressed underneath. Its skin was covered in strange spiral patterns, looking completely out of place compared to the normal Sky Island fruits around it. That's it for today. Meet you in next part.